Hello, everyone. I call the Select Board meeting to order today, Wednesday, July 5th at 7:06 p.m. A motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I
Aye.
vote aye as well. Roll call, please. Mr. Gito.
I'm here.
Oh, great. Vice Chair Cavey,
Present.
Mr. Carrara,
Here.
and Mr. McCrisky is absent today, but I'm here. I ask that you stand to salute our flag if you are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In accordance with Governor Baker's declaration of June 16, 2021, granting certain pandemic-related authorizations related to public board and town meetings and recently extended until March 31st, 2025, this meeting will be conducted both in person and virtually via Google Meets. The meeting will be recorded by SMAC Cable Television and broadcast live and may be live streamed at www.stoughtontv.org. A recording of the meeting, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings will be posted on the town's website and or SMAC as soon as possible after the meeting if the live broadcast or live streaming is unsuccessful. Times are approximate and items may be taken out of order at the chair's discretion. Let's start with select board comments, please. Are there any comments? Mr. Gito.
Thank you. I heard some people say that the town employees who've been presenting the solid waste proposal, that they aren't to be trusted, that they're trying to rush the proposal through. And I'd like to mention this because trust is a very important word and a very important concept in any relationship or any proposal. If you want to direct your concerns to anyone, direct them to me. I was the one who said we didn't need to have a second public hearing, a second night, that we had heard everything that needed to be heard. But I was wrong. We heard a lot of things in the second evening that helped to shape where we might be going in the future. And at that second meeting, I asked that all the members of the Board of Selectmen have a chance to be heard to express their views. And I was right in that particular instance. So maybe 50% isn't too good, but it's not altogether bad. I want to return to the word trust in what you should expect of your town manager and your town employees, especially the management people. The town manager raised concerns about water, sewer, and solid waste at the town meeting, so everybody was on notice that there were issues to be dealt with. This board has a responsibility to deal with issues. And the department heads, their responsibility is to provide to the town manager and to the Board of Selectmen their best decisions on what should happen. And in the case of the solid waste program, they looked at what was going on in other communities in the state of Massachusetts and chose a proposal after talking with other communities, after talking with the state, and after talking with others, that they did at first. The first public hearing raised some issues that when the second presentation was made, it addressed those issues. And we heard response even to that. And at the end of the second hearing, we made recommendations to the town manager to address the things that had been heard over the course of the 2 evenings. The job, again, of the managers in this town is to present the best that they can, what they see as good practices. It is our job, the public's and the Board of Selectmen's job, to take input from the town. That's why we have public hearings. And to shape the program that we are going to have for the town of Stoughton. So, I would suggest that we begin to look at our processes not as adversarial processes, but perhaps as sharing of information to make the town better, not to have good guys and bad guys, but to have people who are working to try to make the town better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gito. Are there any other select board comments?
Madam
Vice
Chair?
Chair Cavey.
So 2 things. First of all, I'd like to just congratulate the there's many people involved, but I'd like to sort of centrally congratulate the Recreation Department for a successful July 4th weekend. They didn't do it alone. There were a lot of people working in tandem to make sure that everything went without a hitch, our public safety being key among them. But facilitating it, making sure that everything worked, and I think a procurement was also heavily involved, especially with the fireworks. And I just wanted to thank them for taking all of the time and effort to provide a fun show that I've only heard positive things about, and I just wanted to just take a moment to thank them. For the Recreation Department, they had both the 3rd and the 4th. It was a very busy couple of days, and it seemed to go well, even though we had rain threatening us from one end to another. So, well done. Also, just to I don't know, perhaps echo some of Mr. Gito's comments. I think that I really appreciate having heard you say those things. During the hearings themselves, I felt like there was something sort of like a caricature of a town town event, something you see in a movie where you have, I don't know, an oil company somehow like influencing people to make choices that are against the interests of the town, and the only way to prevent it is to rise up and have your voice be heard. I just feel like that was so far from my understanding of the truth that I think you have a lot of very genuine people who have no particular will other than to do what's best for the town involved at virtually every level of this. The citizen participation was excellent. I think there's a lot of really great things we heard. What I think would have been, this is, I'm not sure how to prevent this or how to sort of help people understand these processes, but we're here working for you. We want to hear the voice of the people and the concerns they have. And this is a very open space. I think maybe the layout also does not help us, having this sort of system where we're up on the high thrones and the people who want to talk have to sit a million miles away and have all the lights on them. That might be also contributing to sort of an adversarial sense of this on the one hand. On the other hand, people expressing their thoughts, that's exactly why we're here. The town manager had arranged some public input sessions in April to get exactly that kind of input. At the time, people weren't aware of it, or whatever might have happened. So we did it live. I think we got a lot of good information. But I just want people to know that they can access us without a sense that we are on the take or doing something, going to ram it down their throats or make them do something they don't want to do. It's just simply not the case. I think collectively, everyone's trying to do the best they can with the information they have, and the input's invaluable. I would just say, there's no reason to sharpen the axe or the pitchfork. You can actually show up here, and you're very welcome. And we want to hear what you have to say. And I think at every stage along the way, we've tried to incorporate the views of the public into the policies. And I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. So I just wanted to express that, and my thanks for the town staff who have worked very hard. And Mr. Gito, I know you were involved throughout a lot of this process in crafting a program that will help us both financially, but also will help us financially, but also are just generally better policies, an attempt to find better policies for the town. So I thank the town staff, the town manager, as well as Mr. Gito for putting that time and effort in. And I'm looking forward to discussing the merits of it at our next meeting. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Gito and Vice Chair Cavey. I concur with your comments, and I look forward to our next hearing and discussion and moving right along. I wanted to take a moment to recognize one of our employees that recently retired at the Stoughton Public Library by reading the proclamation. It's for Antonio P. Mintel. Whereas Antonio Pimentel was born on July 7, 1956 in the islands of Flores, Azores, Portugal, and whereas Antonio Pimentel is one of 6 siblings, parents both deceased, married to his wife Helena since May 3, 1980, has 2 sons, Christopher and Jeffrey, both married, and a grandchild, Sophia Victoria Pimentel. And whereas Antonio Pimentel has worked since he came to the United States at the Car Wash, Corcoran Shoe, McNamara Farms, American Millwright, Moore Shoe, J. Baker, and Casual Male Big and Tall. And whereas Antonio Pimentel was hired by the town of Stoughton on June 13, 2011 as a day custodian at the Stoughton Public Library. And whereas Antonio Pimentel has been a great asset to not only the Stoughton Public Library, but the whole town of Stoughton offices. He went above and beyond his job title and never refused to help with even the most menial job. Now, therefore, we, Deborah C. Roberts, Stephen Cavey, Joseph McCrisky, Scott D. Carrera, and Louis Gito, members of the Stoughton Select Board, extend a heartfelt thank you to Antonio Pimentel and thank him for 12 years of dedicated service to the town of Stoughton. This proclamation is made in Stoughton on the 7th day of June, the year of our Lord, 2023. Thank you very much for this time. Scott, did you have any comments?
I've known the Pimentels for a long time. They're a great bunch of people. They're the first ones at the fiestas. They're the last ones to leave, and you can't say enough about them. They're all great people.
Thank you for sharing. Let's move right along to our next agenda item, which is town manager comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the board. A couple of comments on a couple of separate issues. I was not going to speak to at all the comments made by the board with respect to last Tuesday's public hearing, but I'd like to, because I found that hearing to be edifying. I found it to be satisfying. You know, democracy isn't always pretty, but one of the reasons I accepted this opportunity in Stoughton is you, the board, made it crystal clear that we want to build on our relationship with the citizens of Stoughton. And in order to do that, we need to be fully transparent. We need to think things out thoroughly. And we need to go as far as we can, overboard if necessary, to communicate with each and every resident. That has made my job easier. And I had the enjoyment last night of watching the recreation of the writing of the U.S. Constitution in Philadelphia in 1788. And those 40 all men were in that room for 40 days. And it was not pretty. But what came out of that was a document that has served this country well for almost 250 years. As we attack some of these major problems before the town, we were privileged to have Mr. Gito be part of the committee, representing the citizens of this town with great passion and great insight and great interest. And he challenged us to come up with and explore and analyze many approaches to solving this difficult problem, and we did. From your motion last week, you instructed that committee to reconvene, and we did the following day. And what we'll have on your desk by early next week is a detailed action plan for addressing the objectives we laid out in the presentation. As you recall, there were 6 major objectives, from breaking even to beautification to enforcement and the like. Many 6 objectives. So we'll have that on your desk next week, and then schedule the follow-up meeting the following Tuesday to ask for your consideration on our plan, and I'm sure we'll get input between now and then. And I'm very excited about it, because many of the ideas that came out of that meeting were outstanding, were extraordinary. And you're going to see those ideas incorporated into the staff recommendation to this board. So at the end of the day, when we look at the process, I think we should all conclude that it was a healthy process, but it was the first of many. And I really appreciate Lou and Steve's comments, in that I'm going to repeat the way we closed the last hearing. We're on your side. We're not the enemies of the people. We're the servants of the people. It's our job to think hard, to work hard, to prepare properly, and to present the best possible plans we can give this community. And through your leadership, we were able to do that. And through the input of the community, we were able to come up with a better plan than our first draft. So we're really looking forward to bring that plan to you. You're going to see every element that was addressed to be addressed in that plan. So by Wednesday, you'll have it. People will be able to read it and see it and comment on it, consistent with our promise to be fully transparent. So I thank you for your comments, board members. But I am very encouraged by the way that meeting went, that we can tackle almost anything. And we'll need to in the years to come. Thank you for that time, Madam Chair. The second comment, more of a procedural issue. As you know, the FinCom is deliberating right behind us on the transfer requests. I don't believe they can vote unless we vote first. So my question is, or my request is, could we take up those transfers out of order so that we can pass it over to the other branch of government that needs your vote in order for them to take their vote?
Yes. Under my discretion, I will I will,
Madam Chair, if Scott just said it doesn't matter that we voted first. So if that's the case, then no problem,
okay,
if that's the case. And I'm sure they'll come out if they need our vote.
okay.
How's that? Thank you for that, Madam
All
Chair.
right, thank you very much. Moving right along to citizens' comments. Mrs. Walsh, please. You absolutely may.
Thank you. I think one of the things we're proudest of in Stoughton is the way we take care of our children. As you may or may not know, half the children in our schools are considered low income. And that entitles them, and all Stoughton school children, to a free breakfast and a free lunch every school day. June 14th was the last day of school. Now, in a lot of places, they would just leave them. No breakfast, no lunch, no problem. And that's not the attitude in Stoughton. There was a full-page ad in the Shopper Saver, I guess it's called now. And we do have a government-paid-for free lunch program for our school children. And they'll be at the O'Donnell Middle School and the Wilkins Elementary. The program will begin July 10th, and it ends on August 4th. At the middle school, breakfast will be from 8:30 to 9:30, and lunch will be from 10:45 to 11:45, Monday through Friday. At the Wilkins, which is on Central Street, breakfast will be 8:30 to 9, and lunch 10:45 to 10:15, Monday through Friday. All food must be consumed on the premises. No food is allowed to be taken home or off the property. And if you have any questions, contact the Stoughton Public Schools Food Service Department, 781-297-1051. If there are any changes to the days and times, notices will be posted at the individual school sites. Now, along with the state's EBT program and the federal government's food stamp program, and these two programs, I think we're hoping as a nation to bridge that gap so that no child in school or out is hungry. The only thing I wish is that there were transportation provided. If you are in the group that's going to go to breakfast or lunch, and there are kids in the neighborhood that you know are hungry too, it would be an extreme kindness to put them in the car too, or the pickup, or the SUV, or whatever you're driving. Because we all know there's kids that are home during the day because mom and dad both have to work, and they don't have a bike, or they can't walk to and from the school safely. And those kids need food too. I know we have 2 food pantries, but again, mom and dad are at work sometimes when those institutions are open. But I think we're trying as a town to make sure that they nowadays call it food insufficiency. When I was growing up, we were just hungry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Walsh. Are there any other citizens' comments in the room, online? Okay. With that silence being, there are no other comments. Just 1 minute. I'm going to see if we're ready to move to our next agenda item, which is item number 5, the public hearing. I believe we're all set. Vice Chair Cavey.
Madam Chair, members of the board, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 157, to hear and consider the request for a dangerous dog hearing Date June 14th, 2023, filed by the Stoughton Animal Control Officer concerning 2 dogs harbored at 408 Technology Center Drive, apartment number 5420, and owned by Rosalina D'Souza Geller. I make a motion to open the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. With that, we will transition to Attorney Brian Winter, who will describe the order of operations for this evening's hearing. Attorney Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the introduction. My name is Brian Winter. I'm an attorney at Mead, Tallerman, and Costa, and my office serves as town counsel. Before we can get underway here, though, I believe we have Ms. Geller and counsel here. Can I just confirm that that's correct? Okay, I just want to make sure all the parties necessary to this are present. Thank you. I'd like to say a few words by way of an introduction on the procedure, also the roles that I play and that the board plays. I'd like to mention a few things just about what you can expect for this hearing in terms of witnesses testifying and how we're going to handle evidence and the public hearing component of it. And then there's a third phase to all of this, and that's when the public hearing is closed, meaning all the parties have finished presenting their evidence. You'll close the public hearing. I'll ask you if you're ready to close the public hearing. And then we'll move into a deliberation phase where the board will have to discuss the evidence and what kind of order it wishes to consider. Does everybody have a copy of this sheet? It's on my letterhead. Everybody have this? I'm going to refer to this later in the evening, so I just wanted to make sure everybody has it now. And if you didn't, we'd get you a copy so you'd have a chance to look it over. So that's essentially the outline of the statute. And I'll talk about that in more detail as we go forward. But if you've had a chance to look at it already, it provides something of a guardrail for the kinds of things we're going to talk about tonight. And so I'll get back to that in a little bit. So in terms of the roles, as I mentioned, it's a public hearing, and essentially we tend to refer to these as adjudicatory proceedings, meaning it's a little bit more than a public hearing. The board is serving essentially as judge and jury to hear a case and consider the evidence and then issue a decision. We have 2 dogs that are the subject of this hearing, so 2 decisions essentially. My role as counsel is to essentially serve as a hearing officer, and although I don't like to say it this way, kind of a prosecutor. I'll move the proceedings along and call witnesses and try to move us through the public hearing portion of it. That being said, and this is why I don't like to refer to myself as a prosecutor, I don't have any stake in the outcome of these hearings. It's my job to create a record for you, to help you through this process, but I don't have any opinions or feelings one way or the other as to what kind of result should be reached at the end of this. And so I'm essentially more of a hearing officer, a neutral, to help the board through this process. So that's essentially the nutshell version of this hearing. Now, that's my role and the board's role. Now, in terms of protocol, you're going to hear testimony under oath. You're going to receive certain documents from a few different witnesses. And I'm going to start because the town filed the complaint, so it's our burden to go forward and produce evidence. So you're going to hear from the detective that was at the site and responding to the call. You're going to hear from the animal control officer. If it's the board's pleasure, what I'd like to do is, because this is somewhat adjudicatory, although informal, when I've heard or solicited testimony from a witness, I'd like to give counsel an opportunity for the dog owner to ask any questions that they might have. You know, inherent in this whole process is fairness, right? Due process. This is a very important subject matter, and so I believe everyone is due their opportunity to ask questions and present whatever evidence they see fit to present. After you've heard from the two town witnesses, we'll invite the dog owner and her counsel to present their case however they wish to present their case. They don't have to do it the way I do it. They can do it any way they see fit. And we have a chance to ask questions of any witnesses they present. And if they have documents or videos or anything they want us to look at, we can talk about those too. So that's the basic hearing phase of this, and then we'll move on to deliberations. So the last thing I want to leave you with before we get underway is this case is about two dogs. And per the statute, you need to determine basically three ultimate things. Whether or not you're just going to dismiss the case altogether. If you don't find any evidence that the dog is a nuisance or dangerous, you just dismiss it. Stage 2, you could find that the dog is a nuisance, one or both of them. Stage 3, you could find that they're dangerous. So those are the ultimate findings you have to make, and from each of those, certain other things flow. But the reason I mention that is because this case is about the dogs. It's not about the owner, it's not about the owner's place of living or way of life or any of those things. It's about the behavior and disposition of the two dogs. And so I'm going to try to keep people as honest as I can to be focused on that element and nothing else. I'll ask the board and I'll ask any witnesses or counsel who ask questions to try to stay focused on that relevant evidence. Obviously, we're all meeting each other for the first time here, so we're going to provide everyone a little latitude, of course. But that's the topic. And so what we're not doing is investigating anything else but the two dogs. And so I want to keep us, focused on that. And so with that, the next order of business would be to swear in any witnesses that are going to testify this evening. So, Madam Chair, if it's okay, and if I have your permission through you, I'd like to ask anyone who's going to be giving testimony and evidence to stand up and raise your right hand, and through the chair, we'll have you sworn in.
Yes.
Is that everybody?
Excuse me.
Yep.
It's very dark in this corner. Do you mind?
No, not at all.
There you go.
Maybe turn on the other one.
Give me a little more light over here.
What about anyone online?
Yeah, and that's what I was just going to ask, if there was anyone else out there. And if we miss someone or someone comes late, we can swear them in afterwards too. But assuming that we have everybody, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're going to give to the board this evening in these proceedings is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And Madam Chair, I was just going to say, before we get underway, I'd like to ask if the board has any questions, and then I'd like to ask if the board would like to hear from the Dog Owners Council or would like any kind of opening at all. So first and foremost, does the board have any questions?
Vice Chair Cavey had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Winter. Just strictly procedural. Since this is a public hearing, does the public have a role at any point during these proceedings?
Thank you, Selectman Cavey. My answer to that is that anyone who has firsthand knowledge or direct evidence of the dogs and their behavior would be relevant witnesses and would have information germane to the proceedings here. And I'm clarifying it that way because unlike a normal public hearing where you may get just sort of generalized questions and comments from the public, this is an evidentiary hearing. And so sort of generalized questions about dogs or things like that just aren't relevant to these dogs and this incident. And so with that caveat, I would say yes. And at the end of my case, at the end of the owner's case, we will ask for anyone else who has evidence that they want to present. And so there will be that opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cavey. Mr. Carrara.
Being involved in one of these, two of these prior, and liquor hearings, it's pretty much because it's called an open hearing, it means it's an open hearing, not open to the public to jump in. And if we open it to the public, those people are all going to have to be sworn. So it's those people that stood up that have direct effect are the ones that would be pertinent. Anybody that just has like hearsay, I don't think it's going to hold much weight, like you say, if they're just talking about, well, I had one of those dogs or something like that. It's a hearing, it's open, because it's in the open, that's what we have to do by law, but it's by no means is it like anybody from the public can just waltz in and start talking. So, Madam Chairman, you have control over that.
Yes.
And I agree completely with that statement.
I have a question. It's regarding procedural, the process. So there are 2 dogs involved. So how do you foresee moving forward? Some information will overlap, of course, but for the most part, one dog's, the report on one dog, and that first dog is Maverick, and then a second process to discuss Dakota, the second dog, or how will this work? Just so I can make sure we have our thoughts and we let everyone involved know.
Certainly. And for the evidentiary phase, like you just said, Madam Chair, there's a common location, common nexus of facts and events, and so you're going to hear evidence about both dogs at the same time. Where I think it's going to become most important is when you get into deliberations. I don't think it would be appropriate to just treat them as a single, dog and lump them together. I think it would be much more prudent when you go through your deliberations to consider each of them separately. And so they are separate individual animals, different behaviors, they were involved in different ways. If you've read some of the things that were filed already, the facts and circumstances are different. And so when we get into deliberations, I'm going to ask the board to take one at a time. And we'll go down, so this document that I gave you, we'll go down this checklist for each of them separately. And now you can issue your actual order in one document if you wish, or we could do 2 separate ones. I don't think it makes much of a difference. But because your orders may be different and your findings may be different, which means the owner's desire to appeal, which they do have. They have the ability to go to district court and challenge any result that occurs here tonight. That might be different for each dog. And so I think we do need to separate those out in different tracks.
Thank you. I see a gentleman standing.
Mr. Gito.
Oh, Mr. Gito, sorry about
Here
that.
I am. Oh, I'm way over here. Do we ask questions through you or directly?
At the chair's discretion, I think when you hear a presentation from a witness, when that witness is finished, I may have some questions, but I obviously will yield to the board first. And so you're more than welcome to ask your own questions at that time.
Yes, please step forward, state your name and your affiliation with the case, please.
I'm Attorney John Moriarty. I represent the respondent, Ms. Geller, and I just had some questions on procedure as well.
Yes.
Can I direct my questions to Mr. Winter?
Attorney Winter.
So, Mr. Winter, I understand the grief in this one particular circumstance with this being a quasi-judicial proceeding. So my question would be is, after you question, it's the town's burden, obviously, to bring their case. After you question, do I have the opportunity to, I want to use the term cross-examine loosely, the witnesses separately? Is that correct?
Yes, and I think, if I may, Madam Chair, I alluded to that a little bit earlier, that when we're finished with one witness, and this is when I was talking about due process and fairness to everyone, absolutely.
So will the order be the direct examination of the person providing evidence, and then you're responding with additional questions to him first before I have the opportunity to cross-examine, or are you going to take it at the end after collective information is presented from both sides? I want to use, it's not a criminal proceeding, but in the same sense, it almost is, because the life of 2 dogs are at stake. So normally in a trial sort of setting, we would examine the witness, and then we would have the opportunity to cross-examine the witness, and then the judge may have the opportunity to have questions and or jury presented questions.
Sure, it's a fair question, and if I may, Madam Chair. In my experience with state tribunals and state boards and adjudicatory boards, typically the board, being the jury, gets a chance to ask their questions first, and then the other side will get a chance to respond, ask your questions, and we may have follow-up questions.
Perfect.
And so I think the key point is you get every opportunity you deserve. It may be in the middle, it may be at the end, it may be twice.
Thank you. And secondly, there is evidence that I provided the town that will be relevant to, so to say, the direct, I think, of both the officer and the dog officer as well. Will that evidence be allowed to be brought in through cross-examination, or is that just admitted in whole as evidence that has been presented and admitted to the town already? Because I do believe you've submitted most of that. You've been submitted and probably reviewed most of that information.
And again, through the chair, some but not all. I think some things we only received today, and so the board might not have that yet. And so I would leave it to you when you want to bring that in, when you want to refer to it. I think we now have it all.
You do.
And so we can do it two ways. And some of it, I think I'd like to discuss when you do raise it, just because of the content. There may be things we want to discuss. But what we can do is first acknowledge it. We're not going to be objecting to evidence here. This is fairly informal. And so we're not going to do any of that part of the trial work. But we can acknowledge it for the sake of the record, just to make sure we all have the same documents and we're working from the same playbook. And then for sort of audio-visual things, we can talk about how best to do that. And again, my concern is not whether or not we do it, but just some of the content, because this is a public hearing, and this video is going to get posted on the SMAC website for everyone in the world to see. And so I'm sensitive to some of the content here.
Understood.
So we'll raise that when we get to it.
Certainly. I think that's all.
Fair enough?
Now. Thank you. How would you like to sit back during, how's, I guess, logistically, where do you want us to be?
If you're speaking, I ask that you sit at the table, and then when the next group comes up to speak, then they sit at the table. And that helps with the acoustics and the visual and SMAC recording and so forth and so on.
Would you prefer Madam Chair, would you prefer I question from my seat?
No, from the table, please.
From the table.
Because you have the microphone and everything right there.
So next to a testifying witness?
Yes.
Okay? Wonderful.
We're flexible, we're nimble here.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
And if there are no further questions, we can get underway.
I have one question. I haven't seen anything that came in today. Was I supposed to see that?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you.
So just so everybody who's attending knows, the selectmen's packets are prepared many days in advance of the meeting. And so they only include the materials that we had at the time. So you may receive documents or see videos or pictures tonight that no one's seen yet, with the exception of maybe, me. But those are just evidentiary matters, and they'll come in as they come in. And I think you know this already, but let me just say it out loud. These hearings can be emotional. It's a serious topic. And so you're going to hear a lot of evidence tonight. And in some cases, the answer may be obvious. In other cases, you're going to have to reflect on it. So we have this on the agenda for this evening, but don't get the misimpression that that means this is your one and only chance. You can continue this if you see fit. And so if you receive documents you've never seen before in your life and you want to read them, you get a chance to read them. And if the board decides we want to pick this up at your next meeting, we can do that as well. So it's completely up to you how you want to proceed. But I didn't want you to think that this is just one bite at the apple and you have to make a life or death decision. You don't. You take it at your own pace, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Mr. Winter, so we're ready to proceed. It's got to be open. Oh, it has to be open. Just cracked a little bit.
Just tell them to keep it down.
Okay.
All right, if I may proceed,
All right,
Madam
please,
Chair.
Please do.
Detective Barber, could you please come up? I swore everybody in at the beginning, yes. So just for the record, I think we have 3 people sworn in right now. I don't know if there was anybody online, but if anyone testifies other than the 3 people that were sworn in, we'll swear them in again, just so we make sure.
I would like to be a witness if possible. I'm online.
I don't,
I cannot see.
There's somebody who's just recently admitted. Her name is Paula Cardula. Hopefully I didn't mispronounce her name. I apologize if I did. But she just popped on probably about 3 minutes ago.
Okay.
I've been listening to the call from the beginning. I just couldn't get on.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, and we've all noted that, so we will make sure that we come back to.
Okay.
Was it Ms. Cardula? I'm sorry?
Pardulo.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll do that, I think, next, when we take her testimony. Detective, could you please introduce yourself to the board?
Yes, my name is Daniel Barber, B-A-R-B-E-R.
And just in summary form, if you would, could you describe your employment and your role with the town of Stoughton?
Yes, I've been a police officer for the town of Stoughton for about 10 and a half years, and I've been serving at the rank of detective for the last 3.5 years. The night in question, I was working a patrol overtime shift in a marked cruiser and in uniform.
And could you just briefly summarize some of your duties and responsibilities as detective?
Yes, as a detective, my primary responsibility is to follow up on cases that are not cleared in the patrol division, and by cleared, that means cleared either by arrest or by lack of disposition. I respond to cases that patrol needs assistance with by either processing scenes, developing interviews, developing leads, and following up on cases in that regard.
And directing your attention to June 14th, were you on duty at that time?
Yes, I was.
And when did you come on duty?
4:00 p.m.
Okay, and roughly around 6:10 p.m., did you respond to a call?
Yes, I did.
And what was the nature of that call?
The nature of the call, it was a 911 call received and dispatched for a fight between two dogs at a dog park at the 408 Technology Center Drive, which is the Bell apartment complex.
And before we talk about that event, did that call generate an incident report?
Yes, it did.
Have you provided that incident report to the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
Are there any other documents that were generated as a result of that call?
There's no other documents. There's been follow-up narratives included in that report that have also been provided.
Photographs?
Yes.
And those have also been provided to the board?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not going to ask you to read your entire report, but just so we don't stand on ceremony here, could you summarize the events that you witnessed at approximately 6 o'clock on the 14th of June?
Yes, so I was dispatched along with Officer Grover to 408 Technology Center Drive. I was the first officer that arrived on the scene, and I made my way to the dog park, which is to the left when you enter through the gate at the beginning of the complex. I pulled up and I saw two people whom I would later learn are the parties involved in this incident. The first one was a gentleman named Aaron. He was standing there with his dog, who was later identified as Chesty. And there was a female whom I recognized as Miss Geller, and she was standing there with her two dogs named Maverick and Dakota. I exited my cruiser and I approached Aaron first, and I asked him if he was injured or if his dog was injured. He replied that he was not injured and his dog was not injured. So to prevent the situation from escalating and to be able to speak to parties individually, I asked him to go up to his apartment, and I told him that I would come back and speak to him later. And Aaron complied, and he went up to his apartment, and that was the end of my interaction with him at that time. I then went over and spoke to Miss Geller. Miss Geller was standing there with her two dogs. She was holding them on a leash. They were connected by a tandem leash, so they were essentially attached to each other. And she briefly recounted her version of events that resulted in her calling 911. She informed me that she was in the dog park with her two dogs, and that Aaron had approached and wanted to make entry into the park, and that she had asked him not to because her dogs were unsecured and presumably afraid that there could be some interaction between the two of them. Aaron's dog approached, and there was a skirmish between Aaron's dog and her two dogs that resulted in what she believed to be an injury to her dog Maverick, which resulted in her calling 911. I spoke to her. She pointed out what she believed to be the injury to her dog, and I did observe a small cut above Maverick's left eye. Was not bleeding and did not appear to be serious. And that was essentially what she had reported to me. While I was speaking to her, it was a brief interaction with her, I observed a female who I would later learn to be named Christine, the victim in this case. I had observed her speaking to the woman who just identified herself on the screen moments ago, Paula. I observed them off to the side, but I didn't know that they were involved in this incident whatsoever until she had approached. I would later learn that Christine and Aaron are boyfriend and girlfriend, and she also owns the dog that was the other half of this incident. Christine began to approach me while I was speaking to Ms. Geller, and I didn't make any notice of her interaction. I presume she was just approaching me to provide information that she may have witnessed. She approached me, and as she got to about 15 feet from me on my right-hand side, I could see one of Ms. Geller's dogs, Maverick, lunge towards Christine. And Christine hadn't said anything. She hadn't vocalized anything. She approached slowly, not in any type of manner that I believed provoked either the dog's attention or really my attention for that matter. The dog, Maverick, lunged at Christine, and that caused Ms. Geller to lose control of the leash. The leash was dropped, and then Maverick sprinted towards Christine's leg, almost dragging the second dog, Dakota, behind her. And the dog, Maverick, immediately bit and latched onto Christine's leg and began shaking its head back and forth. I grabbed Maverick by the collar and punched her in the face in an attempt to get the dog to release Christine's leg. It didn't work, and then Christine fell to the ground, and Maverick continued to shake the head back and forth and would not release. My initial inclination, because I could see Christine's leg being pretty viciously mauled, and it was gruesome. My initial inclination was to shoot the dog, but I couldn't safely do it because I feared that Christine may inadvertently get injured, get shot. There were also a number of other people around. So I decided to take my department taser out. I turned the taser on, and I performed what's called a drive stun, which it's a mechanism on the taser that when you put the taser against the dog, it generates static electricity and shocks the dog without actually shooting the dog with the taser probes. That had an immediate effect. Maverick released Christine's leg, but then immediately turned back towards me and, in my opinion, attempted to bite towards where I was holding the taser. That caused the two dogs to run away briefly, and I continued doing what's called an arc switch, which it's the same thing as a drive stun. It displays the electricity. It makes that distinctive noise that sounds like static electricity, and if you actually are looking at it, it creates two visible lines of electricity, and it creates a very dramatic effect when it's displayed in the air. The dogs ran away briefly. I holstered my taser. Ms. Geller went over and attempted to corral the two dogs that had escaped, but unfortunately she was unsuccessful, and Maverick turned again, sprinted directly back towards Christine, and grabbed onto her left leg and latched down again, and again continued to shake its head violently and continued to bite her. So I again had to taser Maverick, and that time there was success, and she let go, ran away, and at that point Ms. Geller was able to corral both of her dogs and separate them and bring them back into the apartment. Miss Wilson, Christine Wilson, at that point was able to run towards the side where Miss Cardullo was waiting, and we then rendered medical attention to her.
Madam Chair, I have a few questions, and I'm happy to begin, but I
Yes,
defer to
please.
the board if you wanted to ask questions first.
Yes, Attorney Winter, please start.
Detective, when you first arrived on the scene, did you have any awareness of where Christine was, or were you interacting with Aaron alone?
I was only interacting with Aaron. I saw where Christine was, but Aaron was to my left along the fence of the dog park, and Christine was along the apartment complex on the right. There's a considerable distance between those two locations. I observed her, but I had no idea that she was involved in this incident in any way at that point.
So in your initial interaction with Aaron, Christine didn't approach, didn't speak, didn't involve herself in any way at that period of time, about 6:10?
Yes, that's correct.
Say. And just very briefly, could you just describe the premises a little bit for board members that may not be familiar with it? Where's the dog park in relation to the units?
Sure. So the Bell is it's a large apartment complex in North Stoughton on Technology Center Drive. It's a gated community, so when you come in, there's a gate that requires individual access to open, so it's not admissible to the public. Prior to the gate is a large colonial-style building, which is the leasing office and a general lounge. When you come in through the gate, and when you take an immediate left, there's several, I believe there's 3 distinct buildings on the property, but that could be wrong, each of which has several apartment buildings. It's a large complex. The dog park is immediately to the left, all the way to the left side. I believe it abuts the Marriott, or excuse me, now it's the Sonesta Hotel in the back there. And there's a small, I guess it's a dog park. It's really like a fenced-in area where dogs are permitted to be on that property. And it's all the way to the left. And there's a series of garages just past that. And then there's the building, there's one of the large apartment complexes directly to the right of that. And that's my memory of where this incident took place. The incident itself took place in the parking lot, in the roadway, so to speak, in between where the dog park is and where this building is.
And when you first arrived on the scene and interacted with Aaron, approximately how much time had transpired between that moment?
Excuse me, Attorney Winter. Yeah. Can you bring the microphone a little bit closer?
Of course.
Maybe you can move it closer this way.
Well, I was leaning backwards, which I'll try not to do again. From the time period when you were interacting with Aaron to when Christine approached, do you have any sense of how much time had transpired?
I do. So from my memory, I was dispatched to the call around 6:10 p.m. I arrived there, I want to say about 4 or 5 minutes later, maybe 6, so not long. And then the interaction with Aaron and Rosalina was brief, and the time that Christine had come over was maybe about 5 to 6 minutes after my initial arrival on the scene. I've received additional evidence in the past couple days that I've had the chance to review, not as much as I would like to, because we've been, I received this on Monday the 26th, and we were unfortunately working on the missing person for the majority of last week, so it hasn't been something that I've been able to review in its entirety. But I was provided with videos from Miss Wilson that were taken from a neighbor that are time-stamped, and I learned the initial interaction between Miss Geller and Mr. Muse, Aaron Muse, that preceded the 911 call, took place at about 6:07 p.m., and the attack itself, the bite itself, took place at about 6:23 p.m. So it's a time distance of about 16 minutes between when the incident that facilitated the 911 call occurred and when the dog bite actually happened. From my arrival on scene to the time that the dog bite occurred is probably about 6 to 7 minutes, but that's just my estimation.
And how much time would you estimate between when Mr. Muse removed his dog back to his apartment and the incident with Christine?
It was right around the 6 to 7 minute mark. My interaction with Mr. Muse was very brief. Although he appeared to be intoxicated, he was compliant at that time. When I asked him to go up to his apartment, he immediately complied and did exactly what I asked him to do. And his dog, the interaction with his dog was otherwise unremarkable. The dog didn't make any aggression or anything that I noticed to be out of the ordinary towards me, and he and his dog went compliantly into their apartment.
You described your observations, particularly of Maverick. Where was Dakota, and did you make any observations of Dakota during those two events?
So Maverick was the only dog that I saw bite Christine or anybody at the time was Maverick. Dakota appeared to be almost dragged over there due to Maverick's inclination to go towards Christine. I didn't observe Maverick biting at all during the incident. However, it was incredibly chaotic and stressful, and I can't definitively say that Dakota did or didn't bite Christine. I just simply didn't observe it. Again, in the video that I was subsequently provided on the 26th, there is an incident, or you're able to see in the video that while Miss Geller is attempting to corral Maverick, Dakota has a reaction towards her and appears to act aggressively momentarily towards Miss Geller. Be just purely speculative as to why that happened, but the primarily aggressive dog was Maverick that I observed.
Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it back over to the board if the board members have any questions.
Yes. Vice Chair Cavey, you had a question?
Yeah, it's just a series of three questions, and some of this I think you've already cleared up. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. During this entire all the events that you witnessed personally, the dogs were attached to one another, correct? Both Dakota and Maverick were attached via a tandem leash of some kind, correct?
Yes, Miss Geller had an extendable leash that went out and connected to a tandem device that connected both of them simultaneously.
Okay. And I think you really just addressed this, but did you witness Dakota do anything aggressive or concerning during these events?
Not at the time. I didn't observe anything from Dakota that I was nervous about. My initial interaction with Dakota, she actually came over and greeted me, and it was a normal interaction. Subsequently, when I reviewed the video, it did appear that Dakota made an aggressive move towards Miss Geller. But again, that was during the height of the incident after there had been a considerable amount of chaos.
Sure.
But I didn't observe that at the time and have no memory of it. It's only based on what I observed.
When I was reading through some of the documents that were sent earlier today, one of the things that struck my attention, and I may be misremembering or misconnecting something, there could have been a clerical error as well, but not that you would have weighed these dogs, but I think the record showed that Maverick was around 30 pounds and Dakota is around 55 pounds. I'll just strictly ask, between the size of these two dogs, was Dakota a lot larger than Maverick? Do they appear to you roughly the same size?
That's possibly a clerical error. My memory is that Maverick is actually larger than Dakota. I believe those two numbers are probably accurate to an estimation, but I believe Maverick is the one that's closer to 50 pounds, and Dakota is the smaller of the two.
Your
recollection
is that Dakota was
in my memory. Yeah.
So Dakota was the smaller of the two?
Dakota is the smaller of the two, that's correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions at this time?
Did the owner of Maverick ever have control over those dogs?
Yes, during my first interaction with Miss Geller, she had complete control over the two dogs. They were totally within her control. They were sitting next to her when I first interacted with her.
And they did not react until Christine came over to talk to you? Is that?
The dogs had no reaction to me whatsoever, except for what I described with Dakota, which I would categorize as a friendly interaction. No problem with that interaction at all. Maverick's reaction was prompted by Christine's arrival next to me. Christine didn't say anything, she just simply approached me, but that is what appeared to spark Maverick's interest in her, for lack of a better term.
And after that, the dogs were acting, or Maverick at least was pulling so hard that that it pulled the leash right out of Sculler's hand.
Yes, when Christine approached me, Maverick lunged with such force that that's what appeared to cause Ms. Geller to lose control of the leash.
And she was not able to get control back again?
No, she was not.
Thank you.
Hello, officer. My question follows with verbal commands. That's what my main question is. We talk a lot about action, but did you ever notice the owner saying stop, give any type of command to her Maverick or Dakota?
Yes. Ms. Geller was doing, in my opinion, everything she possibly could to gather control of the dogs, yelling at them, trying to gather control of them. But the situation was just simply out of control. The dogs were not responding to her. And it was not for lack of effort on Ms. Geller's part that this occurred. She attempted to gain control over her dogs, but was just simply unable to after she lost initial control.
Thank you. Mr. Carrara, and then Vice Chair Cavey.
Detective Barber, when you went there, did you know that Christine was like the person that was triggering it, or did it happen while you were just talking?
I had no idea that Christine was involved in this incident at all until she approached me. Upon my initial arrival in the cruiser on the scene, I observed Christine Wilson speaking to a neighbor along the side of the building, but there were a number of other people outside. It's a very busy apartment complex. There were people and dogs everywhere that were just out conducting their normal business. I didn't know that she was involved at all until I had asked Mr. Muse to go up to his apartment, and I was speaking individually to Ms. Geller, and then Ms. Wilson approached me from the side. And even as she approached me, I didn't know what her involvement was. Again, presumably she had firsthand information that she felt was relevant for me to know, but before I could have any interaction with her, that's when this incident occurred.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Cavey.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, actually, the ways that I have are from the veterinary office of for the animals, and they have a weight for Maverick of 29.5 pounds when he was vaccinated. It doesn't have a date of vaccination, and Dakota was 47 pounds, I believe, when she was vaccinated last. So those were where those numbers came from, but it was about 30 pounds for Maverick and about 47 for Dakota at vaccination.
Sure, I would, if that's what the records say, I have no reason to dispute them. This is, my estimation was solely based on my memory.
Of course.
Of a very
Absolutely.
brief interaction with them.
I just, since I pulled numbers out of thin air, I just wanted to let people know where I actually got these from, and actually one of the numbers I provided was incorrect. So I just wanted to clear that up. But thank you very much for your testimony.
Madam Chair, I just have one or two follow-up questions, if I may.
Yes.
Christine was then transported by ambulance to Good Samaritan, is that correct?
Yes.
And you had described, I think briefly in your original testimony, that you had considered using your firearm.
Yes.
Do you recall what the facts and circumstances and motivation for considering that option as opposed to your taser were?
I was afraid that the dog would not release its grip on Christine, and based on what I had seen at that point, this dog was seriously mauling Christine's leg to the point that, in my opinion, it was a life-threatening situation. And you don't want to use the most severe form of force necessary unless it's necessary, but you also have to weigh the potential risks. And I do believe that the risk to Christine's life certainly would have justified the use of the firearm absent the other safety concerns. But in the totality of my concerns, I couldn't safely discharge a firearm. But that's what I thought may have been necessary to break this dog's grip on Christine's leg at that time. And luckily the taser achieved that effect, although not permanently. The dog ended up returning afterwards, and we were in the same situation afterwards that I was during my initial thought process of which tool to use.
Does the board have any additional questions based on the questions I just asked? And if the answer to that is no, I would ask the chair if we could invite Attorney Moriarty if he has any questions.
Could I ask one?
Oh, yes, Mr. Gito.
Were you at the dog pound as well?
I went to the pound after this incident occurred, yes.
And you went with Dakota?
So what happened after this incident occurred, I spoke to ACO Carlos, and she informed me of what the statute is requiring quarantine for dogs that have potentially attacked a human, and that the obligation is to quarantine them during that time period. Based on what I had witnessed I didn't feel comfortable removing the dogs myself to bring them to the pound. So I requested Ms. Geller transport the dogs under my supervision. So I waited outside the apartment. Ms. Geller retrieved Dakota, who, based on what I had witnessed and presumably Ms. Geller had agreed, Dakota was the lesser of the two concerning dogs, and she transported Dakota to the pound under my escort in a police cruiser. 2 other officers remained on scene for Ms. Geller's boyfriend to return home, and the same process happened with the second dog with the other 2 officers and Ms. Geller's boyfriend. He transported Maverick to the pound under police escort, where he was secured and where they remain.
And your report indicated that during that transport, the 2 officers involved were concerned with the actions of Maverick. Is that correct?
Yes, they were concerned based on the behavior that Maverick was exhibiting in their witness account, and also from what they had learned had occurred prior to their arrival on scene.
That they were concerned that the dog might bite them?
Yes.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions, Madam Chair, from the board, we could ask Attorney Moriarty if you'd like to inquire.
Madam Chairperson, Attorney John Moriarty for Ms. Geller, the respondent and the owner of the 2 dogs. My apologies. Good evening. John Moriarty for the respondent and dog owner of Maverick and Dakota. Thank you for having me, and I'll just begin my questioning if that's okay. Okay. Good evening, Detective. How are you?
Good evening, counsel. I'm good. Thank you.
I'll just go in the order that you had originally testified. Your primary responsibility is, at the time it was as an officer, but now you're a detective?
Yes.
Okay. And your primary role, training, and responsibilities were to respond to crimes, correct?
As a patrol officer, it's not to respond to crimes, it's to respond to any call for service that comes in. Crimes, civil complaints, disputes. People call us, we respond, and we determine the nature of the call.
Aside from your common knowledge of dogs, do you have any formal training in dogs as far as a dog training certificate or as a dog officer or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Have you ever been in a call such as this in the past?
Yes.
Okay. But you're not a certified dog officer?
No, I'm not.
In normal cases like this, would a dog officer respond to a call such as this?
Yes, if this were a day shift and ACO Carlos was on duty, she would have likely been the Stoughton police employee that would have been dispatched. Unlikely it would have been a police officer based on the nature of the call itself.
And your initial, strike that, when we had first spoken, you had provided to me a copy of a CAD sheet and a 911 call, is that correct?
Yes.
At the time, you didn't know what the content of that call was, is that correct?
Yes.
Subsequent to then, you had the opportunity to review that 911 tape?
I have, yes.
And that 911 call was made at approximately 6:06 p.m. on that evening of the incident?
Yes.
And that call, the call maker was Ms. Geller, is that correct?
Yes.
Did any other party call 911 prior to your arrival?
No, there were no other calls for service or 911 calls received by Stoughton PD for this incident.
And after listening to that call, do you have any question that that was Ms. Geller on the phone making that phone call?
No, that was Ms. Geller.
Okay. At this time, I know I've submitted the 911 tape to this board. I would like the opportunity to play it if I could.
Yes, please.
I gave it to your administrator, and I can also play it from my computer as well.
What would be most convenient, Mr.
for Gilda to play.
Ms. Gilda?
You want me to play it? Okay.
Hello? Stoughton Police, lines
I
recorded.
need help.
Okay, where
I
are
need
you?
help. I live at 408 Technology Center Drive. My dogs were in the dog park. This guy brought in his dog, tried to bring in his dog. I told him to wait so I could hook up my dogs and take them out. I have one dog that is bleeding near the eye. His girlfriend told him not to come in here. Yes, I need help.
Okay.
I'm by myself. My boyfriend's not here. I cannot. And I'm asking them to leave, and they're taking too long.
There, okay?
Please hurry. I don't know if my dog needs vet attention that I have to take her to the hospital. So can you please hurry up?
Yep, I'm sending them up
Thank
there.
you so much.
Okay.
Fair and accurate depiction of what the call was made at that time?
Yes.
Okay. At that time, backup was also called to assist you in that call, is that correct?
Yes, 2 cruisers were dispatched. I was dispatched and Officer Grover was dispatched.
Okay. But prior to Officer Grover's arrival, you had actually called him off, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So you were the only officer on scene to respond to that call initially,
Yes.
and you responded alone at 6:16 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at that time, you had testified a little bit about the demeanor of Aaron, the dog owner of Chesty, the bull terrier.
Yes.
Can you expand a little bit on your report as far as his behavior is concerned? You said he was intoxicated. How was his behavior towards you initially?
His behavior towards me initially was animated. He was yelling he was just yelling a lot. I don't specifically recall what he was yelling about. He was very angry, but when I asked him to go inside, he ultimately complied.
Was he acting in a very aggressive manner?
Yes.
At any point in time, did you fear that the situation was going to escalate to the point of violence?
Yes.
Did he have severely slurred speech?
Yes.
And was his dog acting equally as erratic?
No, his dog was actually his dog showed no interest whatsoever, didn't change its demeanor, didn't make any interest towards me. I would testify that it didn't even acknowledge my appearance.
And at any point in time, did you think that you were going to have to arrest Aaron in order to eradicate or eliminate the potentially violent situation?
No, my initial interaction with Aaron, although animated, wasn't anything that I haven't seen thousands of times during my career. After the incident where the dog bite occurred, Aaron's behavior became increasingly belligerent and hostile, but the circumstances had certainly changed by that point as well.
Okay. Ultimately, Aaron brought his dog back to his apartment at your instruction, correct?
Yes.
Did he ever come back out?
Yes.
At that point in time, there was no incidents of biting other than Dakota being bit.
I believe Ms. Geller had reported that Maverick had been bit at that point.
I'm sorry. And you did observe blood coming from Maverick's cheek?
I observed a small laceration above Maverick's eye, but it wasn't bleeding. It just was a small laceration above Maverick's eye, left eye, I believe.
Okay. Is Maverick a dark-haired dog or a light-haired dog?
Maverick is the one that's white and gray.
Okay. And covered in hair in its face?
It has rolls. It's a bulldog.
Okay. But you didn't examine the laceration, did you?
No, I asked Ms. Geller the same question that I had asked Mr. Muse, which is your dog injured? And she said yes. So I quickly examined and saw the small laceration, because if the dog were injured, I was going to discontinue the interview entirely and say, go seek medical treatment for your dog, and I'll conduct a follow-up. Based on what I observed, I didn't believe that the dog needed medical attention, so I continued my interaction with Ms. Geller.
Okay. And at that time, again, there had been no biting that had occurred, correct?
That's correct.
Did Ms. Geller at any point in time prior to the actual incident of biting inform you that Christine was Aaron's girlfriend and point her out to you?
No, I don't believe she had pointed her out to me at that time.
Okay. And when Christine approached you, how far would you say when she started to approach you were you when you recognized that?
She was probably about 15 to 20 feet away from me when I noticed that she was approaching me.
Did you ever give her an instruction to stop and remove herself away from the dogs until you had the opportunity to talk to Ms. Geller?
No.
And why didn't you do that?
It was very, very quickly between when I observed Miss Wilson's presence and the time that the dog lunged that I never even had an opportunity to tell Miss Wilson not to approach. By the time I observed her, the dog had lunged and the attack had begun.
Did it ever come into, when did you learn that Christine was involved somehow as part owner or owner of the dog prior to when she came closer than 15 feet?
No.
Dogs?
I'm sorry, Counsel. I'm sorry for cutting you off. No, I had not. I didn't realize that Miss Wilson was the owner of the dog until after she had been bit.
If you had known Miss Wilson was the owner of the dog, would you have told her to please back up or stay away until I have the opportunity to interview you?
It's hard to testify to a hypothetical, but based on my training experience, I always keep parties separated when I'm interviewing them, so it would have been reasonable for me under the circumstances to ask Miss Wilson to wait until I could approach her and speak to her.
But not knowing the totality of the circumstances and the parties involved at that time, you still chose to let her approach?
No, my testimony was I didn't see her approaching until she was at that distance, about 15 to 20 feet. And as soon as I saw her approaching, Maverick had lunged and the attack had begun. I didn't notice Christine's presence other than speaking to the witness against the apartment complex prior to a split second before Maverick had lunged at Miss Wilson.
With Christine being the identified owner of the dog, would it be reasonable to assume that she has touched the dog Chesty within the period of time that this incident occurred?
Yes, that's reasonable.
And that she handled it closely?
Yes.
Patted it?
Yes.
Potentially gotten the scent of Chesty on her hands or her clothing or her body?
Yes.
Okay. And you say, I'm sorry, Maverick's immediate reaction was to Christine. How immediate was it? Was Maverick's, strike that. Was your attention directed solely on Maverick at the time while Christine is approaching?
I don't specifically recall whether I observed Christine first or whether I observed what I presume to be Maverick's reaction to Christine. They both happened so quickly and almost, I would say, simultaneously that I can't testify whether I observed Christine first or Maverick's reaction to Christine's presence first.
And was your hand on Maverick's leash while you were talking to Rosalina, the owner, and while Christine is approaching?
No, I wasn't touching her dogs during the interaction other than the brief interaction with Dakota when she had come over to greet me.
Okay. And you say Maverick in your best recollection, when did Maverick's attention get excited as Christine approached?
It was when Christine approached that Maverick became interested in Christine's presence.
In your best recollection, do you know the proximity of the two together?
I can only estimate where it was when I observed it, which was at that about 15 to 20 foot range.
Okay. While you were in the park or in your ensuing investigation, did you have the opportunity to, again, walk or explore the dog park?
No, I didn't really go into the dog park. I made my initial observations when I arrived, but I didn't explore the dog park after that.
Did you make any notes of any signs that were posted outside of the dog park?
There are signs posted. I'm not sure what the signs indicate, but there are posted signs on the property.
Did you read those signs?
I may have at the time, but I don't recall what the signs say.
Okay. If I show you a picture of that sign, would you be able to recognize it?
Probably not, but I wouldn't doubt that you're representing what is posted there.
Okay. I'm showing you a picture. Do you recognize that picture?
No, I honestly don't recognize this, but I wouldn't doubt that it is a true and accurate representation of a sign that's posted at the dog park at 408 Tech Drive.
Okay. For the board's convenience, I have provided a copy of that sign. I do have a paper sign as well. I can disseminate to this board if you'd prefer. The print is small, and I can blow it up for you and read it on my phone. It's a digital image provided to the town, which you can do the same thing. I'm glad to read it into the record if you prefer. I will do either at your direction.
Madam Chair, if I could make a suggestion, we have the digital copy, I believe, already, and so to the extent board members want to revisit it, blow it up, read it, they can do that. If you have any questions based on it or want to refer to it, I think it's in the record, and you can just
certainly I can
take it from there.
Sure. Officer, a detective, in the course of your investigation, did you have the opportunity to look for or seek out any rules and regulations regarding the apartment complex?
No, the rules and regulations of the apartment complex or the dog park are completely irrelevant to me as a responding officer. It's a civil action between the tenants of the apartment and the residents. It's not my prerogative as a police detective to enforce dog park rules or apartment policies.
Certainly. But you did observe, in fact, that, and you do know that this community is a gated community?
Yes.
And this dog park is exclusively for the use of its residents and not the general public?
Yes, presumably. The entire apartment is gated, so.
Okay. And in the course of your investigation, you did, in fact, identify Chesty as a bull terrier?
I wouldn't say I identified him as a bull terrier. I think that's what was represented to me.
And who made that representation to you?
Miss Wilson.
Okay. In the course of your investigation, you also said that you acquired some video footage from a potential witness in this matter that recorded the incident that occurred on or about maybe within the same time period as the reporting of the 911. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a video that depicts a portion of the incident that preceded Miss Geller calling 911.
And did you have an opportunity to view that video?
Yes.
And you disseminated that video to me, correct?
I have, yes.
Okay. At this time, Madam Chair, I will leave it up to the board. I don't need to play the video if you have it, and I trust that you will view that video. I can either play it now for your viewing, or I can reserve, noting the fact that that's admitted into evidence, and you can review that on your own, and I can just ask questions on it. I'll defer to you.
Vice Chair Cavey.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was not able to view that video when I tried to open it. I had an alert saying that it wasn't available, or something technology-wise. If it's relevant, and I know some other members may not have been aware that we've received these messages during the day. Since I don't know what's on the video, I can't say much about the content. However, I think it might be relevant to what we're doing, and it'd be worth, I think, seeing it here.
As a prelude, I can only suggest that there's no violence in this video. There's nothing offensive other than behavior and possibly some words. Other than that, there's nothing physically assaultive in the video.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Gito and then Mr. Carrara.
Just for everyone's information, I did not open an email that apparently came to me this morning. So I think I missed all of what you had sent today, just for your information.
Fair enough. Madam Chair, could I ask that the administrator play the video?
Just 1 second. I want Mr. Carrara before we move forward. Okay. Yes, please show, because neither did I have an opportunity to review those.
And Madam Chair, if I could just,
Yes. Mr. Carrara.
I did get something sent to my phone, and as you know, I don't have a high-tech phone like you guys, but I did see a portion of what was done, and I saw pictures of a leg. So I don't know if that's what you saw or what you're going to show us. But
So what's going to be presented is an incident that happened prior to the arrival of Detective Barber, with the interactions between the three parties, human parties involved here.
And what's the source of this information?
One of the neighbors provided that video to Detective Barber in his investigation, which he then
Thank you very much.
subsequently has provided to the town.
Attorney Winter.
Well, just two comments. One is that the rules of evidence are kind of aspirational in a case like this. They're not strictly observed. And so if this were a trial in a court, we probably wouldn't be doing this. But under the circumstances, you can take it for what it's worth, and you can decide the value of it as you take it in. Another point I wanted to make, and it's more of a housekeeping matter, just because we're showing it here doesn't mean the links you all received are going to work. And so in order to make sure we have a file, sort of the master record of this hearing, before we're done here, I'll confer with counsel and with Gilda, and we'll make sure that we do have a digital copy of everything that was admitted today, so that if you want to refer back to it, we'll have it again. Because you're going to see it one time here, and you may not be able to see it later. And so we'll make sure that we have that all documented for you if you want to see it later.
I will just say as a prelude, the camera footage is rather extensively large, so it is difficult to compress, decompress. We had some problems trying to exchange that video back and forth until eventually we found that maybe it was best to send them singularly than in duplicity. So for those reasons, we do have it. I do believe, Ms. Pereira, you have that video. I will say that that's probably the first time it's been. I will
Please
suggest,
describe, yeah.
I'll suggest that that's the first time it played through the system on, so there's probably some buffering that's occurring. That's not what happens when it streams on your computer. So you'll hear it a lot more clearly as far as what is being said and what is being exchanged. And I can direct those questions to Mr. Barber to answer, because I think he viewed the video as well as I did.
I did.
Okay. So, Mr. Barber, do you consider that to be a fair and accurate depiction of the events that occurred prior to your arrival, being the parties involved?
It's a portion of them. It's certainly not the entirety of the incident. It's the portion that was recorded by the witness. I don't know how much of the incident is captured on that versus its length in totality.
Okay. And in that video, it depicts inside the gate or the pet park is Christine, the victim, and Ms. Geller and Ms. Geller's dogs. Is that correct?
Yes. It was difficult to see in that version, but I've watched it a number of times. Mr. Muse and the dog are outside of the dog park area, and Miss Wilson and Miss Geller are inside of the dog park area.
And this incident is occurring approximately 16, maybe more minutes prior to the actual biting of Christine. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in that video, does it depict, or do you think that Christine is being bit, gnawed, or attacked?
No, Miss Wilson was not attacked at any point in that video.
In that video, is there clear audio depicting Ms. Geller asking Aaron to please take his dog away so she can remove her dogs from the dog park?
You can't hear in the version that we just heard, but that is a fair representation of what Ms. Geller is saying in the audio that I've heard on that video.
And does it depict also in the video that Aaron, the co-owner of Chesty, is refusing to leave the dog park?
Yes.
And he's refusing to sort of yield to Ms. Geller's request to remove her dog so that his dog can enter?
He is arguably with no legal basis to be required to do so, but he is not acquiescing to Ms. Geller's demands.
But there are posted rules and regulations outside of the dog park, correct?
Yes.
And is it fair to assume that residents of that gated community would know the rules and regulations of the dog park if they owned a dog?
I'd say it's on a moral and decent level. You would hope that everyone abides by them, but I think they carry about as much legal weight as a suggestion from a neighbor.
Okay.
While we're waiting, I do have a question. In a dog park, is it understandable that all dogs that join this dog park are to be friendly, quote-unquote, type dogs? I mean, friendly toward one another? It's an open space for all dogs that are nonviolent to one another?
Is that
However
question
you
to me? I can answer it if you'd like.
Okay, yes.
I do have knowledge of the lease, and I do have knowledge of the rules and regulations regarding the lease and the lease requirements, as well as the lease that refers to the rules and regulations in the pet park. And all of them are consistent. There are specifically named breeds, which I can't introduce as evidence through, obviously, the officer, because he's not privy to that. Had there been a further investigation conducted into sort of those bylaws built into the lease, he would know that bull terriers are specifically a restricted breed for the complex, and that the penalty for discovering whether there is in fact a bull terrier residing on the premises is grounds for expulsion or eviction. Proof of ownership as well as breed needs to be provided prior to having your lease accepted by the landlord. And that is very common in modern leases, as well as even as recently as 10, 12, 20 years ago. It is known that some breeds are specifically more, have a tendency to violence than others. I have also provided to the board, I used Encyclopedia Britannica as a resource, as a summary for dogs. There's also the American Kennel Club and a myriad of other resources to provide you with things like the dog's demeanor, disposition, sort of the same thing you'd see on the Westminster Dog Show as dogs are being paraded around. What they do, where their breed was from, where it originated from, how they're bred, how they handle with their owners, and then how they interact with dogs, as well as how they interact with people, specifically children, and even breaks it down to male and female depending on the gender of the dog. So all of those things I would suggest to you, and solely evidence that you take at your sole discretion, are factors. But again, Detective Barber wouldn't really be privy to any of that information other than the information I can admit through Ms. Geller, having be a resident as well of the complex and aware of the lease and the bylaws and the rules of the park. Sorry, that was verbose.
And Madam Chair, if I may just add a comment.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'll have some additional things to say about that point when we get into deliberations.
Thank you.
But just two things just to clarify for the board. We don't have anything to do with leases or civil relationships. And so we're just here about the dogs, not the operation of this residential facility. And second, for our purposes, Chapter 140, Section 157 specifically prohibits us from making determinations based on breed. We just can't take that into consideration. Now, a private facility, they're not subject to the law. Doesn't matter. But we can't do that. And so we'll circle back to that when we get into deliberations, but I just wanted to highlight that for you.
So at what point in our process will we hear from other witnesses I may have some additional questions for our detective, but not at this time, and I don't know if any of the fellow board members have any questions for the detective at this time.
Attorney Moriarty, were you finished?
I just had one question for the detective, and I would just
Thought there might
thank
be
you for
another.
giving me the opportunity to just review my notes. Detective, at any point in time during, and you already testified to this, but I just want to ask you again, you're unable to determine whether Dakota bit Christine in this one particular case, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you can confirm that Dakota did not bite you during the course of this incident?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and you can't tell whether Dakota bit its owner in the fray as well, correct?
No.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Unless there are any further questions from the board members, I'd like to ask Detective, Barbara, to stay in case we have any further questions after hearing from other witnesses. With your permission, Madam Chair. And then I'd like to move on to Animal Control Officer Carlos.
Madam Chair, would you like me to step back?
Yes,
Thank you.
temporarily.
Sure.
I guess I have one question.
Yes, Mr. Gito.
Is any of the material that we did not hear from Mr. Moriarty, are we going to be listening to that at some other time? I mean, I see half of this stuff coming through and half of it not. And I'm wondering should we just be proceeding with this, or should we make sure that everybody's got their act together and we have one presentation? I mean, I don't know what the answer to that is, but if we're going to be continuing it, maybe we'll need to go back and look at some of this other stuff. I mean, I don't know.
May I respond, Madam Chair? Or
Yeah,
please. Defer to.
I'll just be very brief in saying that given the the gravity of the decision that we're making, I personally wouldn't feel comfortable rushing this or feeling like we have to have this decided tonight. And I know these things, some of this material should be in your inbox, but as Mr. Winter mentioned, it will all be consolidated into a single place that we can easily reference. And I think that I would expect that we probably would continue this to another time. I'm really speculating. Perhaps the rest of the board disagrees with me, but I don't feel like even after hearing all of this, I think I would need a little bit more time to seriously think it through. But Mr. Winter, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, not at all. And I didn't want to interrupt you, Vice Chair Cavey. I was going to say, I think exactly the same thing you did, which is we haven't gotten to that decision yet. We will get to that decision, and then the board will have to vote whether or not to make a decision tonight or continue. And one of the reasons why you might continue is because some of the evidence we're seeing for the first time, and just due to technology issues, we're not really seeing it very well for the first time. I anticipate that there are going to be more videos, maybe some more pictures, other kinds of things that are going to be presented to you this evening. And so you may choose to reflect upon that and actually study it. Your witnesses have had a chance to see it and watch it, I think, as Detective Barber said, multiple times. You haven't. So that might be one of the reasons why you would choose to continue this, so you can all reflect upon it and come back, maybe ask more questions now that you've seen it. Unfortunately, due to the nature of these things, they move quickly. And often counsel doesn't get engaged until later in the game. And so we don't, unlike a trial where we all show up with our evidence ahead of time and it's all consolidated and done, it's not the case here. And so we may just have to be practical about how we move forward.
Yes, I agree. Any information that came in today in our mailbox, I did not have an opportunity to review. I would like more time to study and reflect and ask more questions as need be. But since we're talking about possibly continuing, What happens to Dakota and Maverick until we make a decision?
So since we're getting to this now, I anticipated that question. And so one of the things that I will ask the parties, if the board is inclined to continue, is A, to determine the status of the dogs right now, which I believe they're in an impoundment. And if counsel and counsel's client agree to maintain that status quo until the board reaches its decision, then there would be less of a public risk to this going a second evening. If that's not the case, and they're seeking some other disposition sooner, then that equation changes. And so one of the things that I would insist upon as your counsel is that if this does get continued, you of course have to keep in mind your duties to public safety, health, and welfare if these dogs are at large while we're discussing this for another week. And so I would engage with counsel when that question comes up and see what their position is.
Thank you. Yes, at any time. We do have some more witnesses, though. Yes, please, while they're here. Thank you. Please introduce yourself and state your relationship to the case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Animal Control Officer Michelle Carlos.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, if you would like me to proceed, I'm happy to inquire of Ms. Carlos.
Please do.
Animal Control Officer Carlos, could you state how long you've been employed with the town of Stoughton and what your responsibilities are in summary form, please?
This November will be 3 years I've been with Stoughton PD. My job is to uphold all of the animal bylaws, state laws. I'm also the animal inspector, so I have to issue quarantines, do inspections, answer to nuisance calls, wildlife calls, maintain the shelter, and care for the animals.
And for all 3 years with the town of Stoughton, have you held the same title?
Yes.
And were you employed in a similar capacity prior to the town of Stoughton?
I was a veterinary technician.
Okay. And with respect to your service to the town of Stoughton, could you just summarize what kind of training and qualifications you have for that position?
So I've completed a state academy for animal control officers as well as a national one, and I've done continuing education credits in dangerous dog hearings, animal behavior classes, things of that sort.
And during those 3 years, do you have any, if you can answer this, any idea of how many calls you've responded to in Stoughton?
Oh, quite a few.
More than 50?
Yes.
More than 100?
Yes.
More than 500?
Yes.
More than 1,000?
Probably around that.
Okay, we've got a ballpark idea.
I've heard I'm the busiest one in the PD.
Okay, so sufficient to say you have a lot of experience
Correct.
regarding these kinds of calls. Have you ever been called to this address before?
I have not.
Okay, have you ever been contacted about the 2 dogs in question, Dakota and Maverick?
I have not.
Prior to this call, obviously.
No.
All right. And you work within the police department, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and how are you contacted to respond to a call?
Through the radio if I'm on duty. When I'm off duty, they call my cell phone.
So it's through the same dispatch systems as
Correct.
the department
Yes.
typically uses for any other position. And now just getting to this evening in question on the 14th of June, do you recall when you were first alerted to the need for your involvement?
Yes, it was around 6:45 p.m. I received a call from Detective Barber requesting my assistance with 2 dogs.
Okay, and what did you do in response to that call?
I dropped my kids off and got in the car, and I told them the dogs needed to be on quarantine for 10 days, regardless of their vaccine status. It's state protocol. And I came in to assist him with the impoundment of the dogs.
Did you give that communication on your way to the scene or after you arrived at
On my way to the
site?
scene.
Okay, and upon arrival on the site, what did you do?
Detective Barbara was already at the shelter, and Dakota was already in one of the kennels, and we waited for Miss Geller's boyfriend to arrive with Maverick, and I started to just fill out the necessary paperwork.
Okay, and at that point, did you make any observations of either of the dogs?
I did. Dakota just seemed very scared and just didn't make a peep, and as well as Maverick when she arrived.
Okay, and what did you do to educate yourself or familiarize yourself with the incident that brought these dogs to the kennel?
Just from years of being a veterinary technician, the classes that I've taken, I have over 14 years of experience working with dogs, and you can learn a lot through their behavior. And I don't want to jinx myself, but I haven't been bit as of yet, so I think I know what I'm doing.
Excellent track record. But more specifically about this incident, you had obviously communicated with Detective Barber.
Correct.
And did he explain to you the facts and circumstances that led to your involvement?
Yes.
Okay, and was this all just verbal communication? Had you read anything or seen anything?
Verbal communication.
Did you see the alleged victim personally?
I did not.
But that was described to you?
Yes.
You were aware
I
of
saw
that
pictures.
when you made your first sort of interactions with the two dogs?
Correct.
Okay, and they were in your care at that point, and where's this kennel located?
499 West Street in Stoughton.
And do you have a protocol, practice, and procedure for how you quarantine dogs?
I just keep them separated for 10 days away from all other animals, humans.
Okay, and how are they cared for while they're in quarantine?
I'm the only one that's allowed to care for them.
Okay, and do you have a protocol for how you do that with dogs that you're unfamiliar with?
Depending on their behavior, I sometimes distract them to go outside of the kennel, and then I shut there's an in and outdoor portion to the kennels, and I can shut the guillotine door and then put the food and water in there while they're outside, and then open it up to let them back in to risk any injury to myself.
Okay, and do you sort of cater that practice to the kinds of dogs that you're dealing with?
Yes.
And what practice did you follow with respect to Maverick?
I did just that.
Okay, and that was based on what exactly? What observations led you to following that practice?
Just from what Detective Barber witnessed, the unprovoked attack.
Okay.
I wasn't going to chance anything. And I do have a report here that I wrote from what I experienced with both dogs while they have been staying with me.
Okay, and speaking separately about Dakota, you heard the same information from Detective Barber that I assume was consistent with his testimony tonight. And did you follow any particular guidelines in order to care for Dakota that was any different?
The same guidelines. Dakota actually had shown to be more aggressive towards me during her stay at the shelter than Maverick did, surprisingly.
And at what point did you request a so-called dangerous dog hearing with the Board of Selectmen?
Within a day or two, I believe, of the incident.
Okay, and in your capacity as the animal control officer, do you document your care of the dogs, your observations of the dogs during the quarantine period?
I do.
And you did that in this case?
Correct.
And you've submitted that initial letter to the select board already, is that correct?
Correct.
And I assume everyone has that. It should be in your packet. That's something we did receive earlier and should have been in your packet. So you should have two letters. One is the request for this hearing, and the second is the report. And, you know, without reading it just sort of verbatim from the page, but could you summarize the substance of that report that you provided along with your request for a hearing?
Just that, given the nature of the unprovoked attack, I'm requesting the hearing, and in my opinion, the dog should be euthanized, considering the nature of the call and just for the liability of the town, the owners, and my job is to protect the community, the civilians, the other animals, and this was a serious attack.
Now, you use the word unprovoked. What prompted you to use that?
She didn't approach the dog. She didn't touch the dog. She didn't do anything. She could have made eye contact with the dogs, and that's something as simple as that can be threatening to a dog. But it shouldn't engage in attack that vicious.
And I'm sorry if I already asked this, but did you interview the victim, the alleged victim?
I did not.
Okay. You also, in your report, mentioned the severity of the attack. With respect to the myriad of calls you've responded to, and I imagine different incidences of varying severity, how do you characterize the severity of this particular attack?
This is the worst one I've had in the 3 years I've been here.
The worst?
Correct.
You also said in your report, from what I've witnessed at the shelter, can you expound upon that and explain to the board what you mean by what I've witnessed at the shelter? What, in addition to the attack, gives you cause for concern?
So I'd like to, if I could read this, because they don't have a copy of this.
I'm just about to get to that, but why don't we jump to that? Actually,
Because that kind of explains everything.
Just so the board is aware, in Animal Control Officer Carlos's letter, she mentions in the last sentence that she would be supplementing. Perhaps you noticed that. She did provide a supplemental report. You don't have it yet. She has it with her. She's going to be providing it this evening. So we're going to jump right to that. So referring to that report, and I'm just going to ask Attorney Moriarty, do you have a copy of this report as well? Let's make sure he does.
I'm sorry, apparently I do now, but I do not have a copy of the original report, and I do not have a copy, is this the original? I don't have the original, and
That's my behavior report.
this is the behavior report.
Correct.
So either report, both the original or the supplement, I don't have a copy of, except for the behavioral report, which is
Okay.
just
Can
handed
we
to me.
get a copy made right now?
I can give them one.
Is that possible?
Yes.
I'll do my best to review while I listen. Thank you.
All these documents are public records. Yes, that one, and I think she just gave them the other one, so those two.
I have Barbara.
Okay, so that's just mine. That's the behavior report I did, yep.
That was today.
Yeah.
So, again, just for the record, all of these are public records, and they can be requested anytime, before and after the hearing, by the way. So, I just wanted to make sure Attorney Moriarty was here. So referring to your new report, your supplemental report, could you summarize the substance of that, please, for the board?
Sure, it's pretty short, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it. So this report is informational to what I've personally witnessed and experienced with Dakota and Maverick while in quarantine at 499 West Street, which is the shelter. So I did speak to Ms. Geller just to try to get a little bit of history on the dogs while I had them. I asked her what they had been exposed to, and she stated the dogs have never been kenneled before or exposed to other dogs or have had any sort of training. They spent most of their time in the apartment with her and her family, with the extent of walking them on leash around the apartment complex. So first I'm going to talk about Maverick. The first few days of Maverick's stay, she would bark and run out to the outdoor portion of the kennel and try to hide in the corner. She was clearly displaying fear. Once in a while, she would come inside and bark at me, but if I were to open the kennel door to feed her or give her water, she would run outside in fear. Towards the end of Maverick's day, she seems to have much less fear, and she wiggles when she sees me and bows her head in a submissive manner. Given this calming signal, submissive style behavior, I have been able to interact with her a lot more, and she seems to have adapted to the fact that I am the caretaker and not a threat. Dakota, on the other hand, the first few days she was very quiet and running the opposite way when I would be going in to feed her, but that quickly changed. She is now growling, aggressively barking, and lunging at the kennel door when I approach. I have to be extremely quick when feeding her, as she will lunge and bark when I try to enter the kennel. This is most likely fear-based aggression because of the fact of being away from the only place she knows and with someone outside of her pack, if you will. I've tried using calming signals, yawning, approaching the kennel, walking with my back towards her, and using zero eye contact, as well as offering special treats, but nothing has seemed to work to gain a little trust with her. And this is very concerning behavior and has not improved at all. After the cleared 10-day quarantine, I moved Maverick into the same kennel as Dakota to offer them the comfort of each other, and hoping it would help with Dakota's aggressive behavior, but unfortunately it did not. In my opinion, these dogs are a huge liability for the owners and the town after this incident. If this attack had been on a child, it could have been fatal. It wasn't just a warning bite, it was an unprovoked attack with an intent. One that was difficult for Detective Barber to stop without use of force with his taser. The owner is unable to control the dogs and did not give them the proper socialization or training, resulting in poor, unpredictable behavior, which in my experience is fear and protective aggression reactions that stem from lack of exposure to new people and animals. Dogs are pack animals, and if they are not exposed properly, the world is scary and threatening to the only pack they know and can result in incidents like this. My job is to protect the citizens and animals of this town, and I am not comfortable with the release of these dogs after what happened and what I've experienced with their time with me. They have already been banned from the Bell. I spoke to the manager, and she informed me that they're not allowed to go back, and Ms. Geller cannot bring them back. It pains me to say, but I feel euthanasia is the safest course of action after this horrific incident. I'm not sure if any rescue would take a surrender after an attack to this degree. This is never the outcome we want, but these dogs have proven to be very dangerous and a threat to our public safety. Thank you.
And to the board members, you'll all have a copy of this report if you don't have one already. The photographs that have been referenced by both witnesses, I assume you all have copies of this set of photographs? You do not? Okay. That will be put in the record for you. Both witnesses have referenced the photographs of the alleged victim. And so we have those photographs and we'll provide those to you. I thought those might have been in your packet. I guess they're not, but we'll catch that up. The video we'll catch up on, and I think there may be more to come. So we're going to have to consolidate that into a record for you to review. So I don't have any additional questions for Animal Control Officer Carlos, but does the board have any questions?
Vice Chair Cavey?
Thank you very much for helping us understand the situation here. So a lot of the work that has been done so far, a lot of the stuff I'm just getting, so I apologize for this, but a lot of it seems to consolidate information about two different cases, two different dogs, into really a single package and a single set of facts. And unfortunately, I really feel like I've got to bifurcate this into two separate pieces and say, you know, the event that initiated contact for you and Detective Barber seemed to involve one dog, and then it didn't seem to, at least there was no witness that can corroborate that it involved the other. However, there is this additional set of behaviors that are taking place within a kennel that are drawing additional concern for you. And I want to understand that a little bit, but also I want to, I've got a couple questions here. I'm going to ask you a couple. I also have one for town council. I'm going to start with the town council one, if you don't mind. Under dangerous dog, it's pretty clear about what constitutes a dangerous dog. It's a dangerous dog, a dog that either, one, without justification attacks a person, or domestic animal causing physical injury or death, which one we can discuss, but that does not seem to be the case with Dakota as far as anybody has witnessed. But the second is, or behaves in a manner that a reasonable person would believe poses an unjustified imminent threat of physical injury or death to a person or a domestic or owned animal. And that's where I think this one might fall into, and I just wanted to see if are we sort of out of scope with this, or is that where that would fit in, given the guardrails that the Mass General law allows?
Well, so we're still in the middle of the hearing, and so I don't want to get ahead of the evidence and your questioning. But this definition was added to give boards some guidance, because this definition didn't exist in a prior version of the statute.
Yeah.
And so the boards just sort of had unbridled discretion to say, dangerous, or nuisance, and they didn't have anything to sort of go on as far as a standard. And so this language was added many years ago, in fact, now. And so you have a certain amount of discretion to use that and decide whether or not the evidence you've heard crosses that threshold. There's no sort of, magic line that gets crossed where this evidence means a yes and this evidence means a no. You're going to have to listen to everything you've heard tonight and say, ultimately, can this board vote to find that one or both of the dogs meets that second prong? I've seen so many of these cases, and the evidence is always different, right? And so sometimes there isn't an attack, but there's behavior that suggests that the next incident might be one. And so you look at the circumstances and what the triggers have been and how the dog interacts with other dogs, other people. And so there may not have been any kind of casualty that resulted from it, but you see the writing on the wall. And so the next one is one we can't wait for. And so that's usually where the second prong comes into effect, where you don't have an actual incident where another dog was killed or maimed or a person was injured, but you have all the warning signs, all the red flags are there. And you can make that determination that the public safety is threatened. And so that's what the second prong is for.
Perfect.
Now, whether or not the evidence gets us there or not, that's your decision.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that I sort of understand where the four corners are on this and where what our role is exactly. So thank you thank you very much. So with regard to the things that you've witnessed, I'd just like to better understand some of the things you've seen. And I don't want to keep on harping on it, but I do want to understand the difference in the dog sizes during the incident, the dog that seemed to be more aggressive is reported on the vaccination records as being about 50% smaller than the other dog. Is that your observation, or you feel they're more or less the same size?
Maverick definitely is a little bit larger. Okay. I think that vaccine record is from a while ago. Maverick's the younger of the two, so.
And also, if I'm not mistaken, Maverick might have been, I think he's only about a year old. I think she's only about a year old. So the vaccination records might be closer to when she was still a puppy.
Correct.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're roughly this, that's good, helpful to help here. Maverick is slightly larger, but they're roughly the same size.
Correct.
Disposition, I want to understand this. During your interactions with them, Maverick has been, in your experience, the time you've seen her, less aggressive?
Correct.
During this time period?
Yes.
And Dakota's, her aggression has actually been significantly worse?
Correct.
And could you help, you've already done this to some extent, could you help us just understand or sort of describe some incidences in particular where you really saw behaviors that had you especially concerned?
With Dakota and Maverick?
Yeah.
I haven't seen any from Maverick. She's only shown signs of fear and then flight. With Dakota, I'm seeing signs of fear and fight, the opposite. Anytime I walk by the kennel, she's lunging and biting at the kennel door, growling. And I think I said to the chief, she's like, "How are you feeding the dogs?" And I said, "Like a ninja," because there's no other way to do it, because I don't want to risk getting bit myself.
And you have a lot of experience with dogs. It sounds both professionally and I'm assuming personally. So as a dog lover, I feel like I also have a good amount of experience, and I've been, unfortunately, I have been bitten. So, so you're better than I am at this. But has the town employed or brought in any sort of like a professional dog behavioralist? I think we've done that in the past. Is that something that we have done or would be interested in doing?
Yes, that's something that we could do. I don't know if it would be at the town's expense or the owner's expense. That's something that the board could decide.
Okay, so that concludes my questions. I thank you so much for the work that you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Cavey. Mr. Carrara.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Through you to Officer Carlos. I have to look at you like an expert. You got 14 years, you're dealing with these dogs. It's tough enough when I go on a job and they say, hey, don't worry about the dog, and you turn your back and it's sneaking up on you. Would you turn your back on Dakota?
No.
No. You said the same thing that I was thinking. What if this was a child?
Yeah.
What if somebody was in that dog park with a child? It wouldn't have ended this way, because what I saw on the video, and I can't share it with anybody, but I'm going to try to figure out how to get it brought back so I can, or maybe somebody else has seen it, but what I saw and how fast these dogs move for bulldogs, and you could see the way they hit and shook, it was pretty intense. And usually when the dog gets a taste of blood, it wants it again. That's what I've learned. So I'm on the same level almost as Officer Carlos. But I wanted to know if she felt comfortable, turning her back. That kind of tells you where we're standing.
Mr. Gito, did you have any question? I don't have any questions either at this point in time. I'm pretty clear. Did you want to move to the witness that was online? Or?
Well, I think Attorney Moriarty might have some questions for Officer Carlos.
I do, thank you. Good evening, Officer Carlos.
Good evening.
And don't worry, I'm extremely docile. I understand that you're a little tense, and I would be too. Everyone has the same interests aligned, and it's not easy to give the sort of recommendation that you did. I'm not testifying. I concede, and I haven't even seen your resume, just due to the number of years that you've done what you've done. You're very experienced in doing what you do. I assume you're a dog owner.
Correct.
You testified earlier that you're a busy person.
Very busy.
I'm sorry? Better? I'll re-ask the question. I assume from what you do, you're a very busy person.
Correct.
Okay. And in your words, I think it was one of the busiest on the force.
It's a joke.
It's probably true. And like me, you give out your cell phone number, and it just seems like that thing doesn't stop ringing.
Yep.
Right. That being said, how much time would you estimate on a week in hours do you spend actually at the kennel?
I'm scheduled 40 hours a week, but I'm there on the weekends for the most part, because I usually have animals there. And I'm there in between calls, but depends on the day.
And how many dogs would you say are under your care at the kennel?
Right now I have 3.
You have 3? And how much time do you spend to those 3 dogs on a daily basis, I guess, with more personal contact outside of quarantine?
At least 3 hours a day.
3 hours a day?
Yeah.
You had testified earlier that these dogs came into your care on June 14th?
Correct.
And at that point in time, they are, you said, quarantined?
Yes.
And can you explain that? Explain quarantine to me. I have a good idea of it, but I think we should all know what actual quarantine is. What is actual quarantine?
So the state mandates, it's a rabies protocol It's to protect other animals, people from contracting rabies. Anytime an animal bites, that animal is to be quarantined, depending on the bite, minimum 10 days. So this qualified for a 10-day quarantine, and it's regardless of their rabies status, the vaccine status, they have to be quarantined.
Okay. And in that quarantine status, can you describe their confines? How were they contained?
So I had them separated in separate kennels, and I just observed their behavior and note any changes, which there weren't.
When you say a kennel, can you describe the material of the kennel, what it looks like, and how big it is?
So it's a concrete floor, roughly, what'd you say, how big the kennels are?
So the inside of the kennels are probably 6 foot by 7 foot, and they have a guillotine-style door that allows them to go outside to a concrete pad that's considerable in size, probably about 100 to 200 square feet each. But interior, inside, they're fenced in, so they're not private, they aren't secluded, and that's the condition in which they're stored during the quarantine period.
Okay. For the record, that was Detective Barber. Is a fair and accurate depiction of Detective Barber's
Yes.
description of how big they are? Okay. So very similar in materials as far as the fencing is concerned as the dog park sort of fence that would
Yes.
exist. Okay. And when the dogs have to pee and poo, do they do that outside, inside, or both?
Maverick kind of did whatever she wanted, but Dakota always went outside.
Okay.
So, but they have the option to go in or out, and I have the air conditioning running on the inside, so it's nice and cool.
And how often are those kennels cleaned?
Every day.
Okay, every day, once a day, or
Twice a day. I try if I have time.
twice a day?
Correct.
During the day, but not at night when you're not there?
Correct.
Okay. Have you seen any of the materials that were provided to the board and to us before? And I'll name specifically, if you heard the 911 tape, have you seen the videos associated with this, all of them, including the before and after?
I did not hear the 911 tape, but I did see all of the videos from Detective Barber's department cell phone.
Okay. So going back to the period of time in the quarantine, do they have any physical interaction with each other, meaning the dogs?
Not during the 10-day quarantine, but when that was lifted and I didn't know any changes in their behavior, I moved Maverick into Dakota's kennel just for their own comfort.
Okay. And did they stay and remain in the same kennel?
Correct.
Okay. So your period of physical interaction with the dogs has been only since June 24th?
Correct.
So
when I moved Maverick.
So approximately 11 days of human interaction.
Well, I've been interacting with them the entire time, just not as close.
Sure. So from the 14th to the 5th, they've actually been away from their owner.
Correct.
Okay. And has the owner had the opportunity, or could they even come to see the dogs?
She could. A lot of times I recommend owners not to do that because it stresses the dogs out a lot more. They see the owner come and go and they think they're leaving and they're not. And it can kind of spiral them into more depression or fear.
Okay. You said when you're feeding the dogs, you do it like a ninja. Can you just expand on that just a little bit? Because there's an image in my head, but I don't know what it really is.
So, like I said earlier, either I kind of distract them to go to the outdoor portion of the kennel and I can shut the guillotine door so I don't have the risk of getting bit at all, or if they're not choosing that option, I either kind of open it quick and put the food in there, or I have like a little plastic shield that I can kind of go in there with. Mainly for Dakota, I had to. With Maverick, she didn't lunge at me at all.
Okay. And you had testified earlier you've never been bit.
I have not.
Good for you, I have. In the face. And that stands true today. Neither dog has in fact bit you.
They have not.
Okay.
But I also note little behavior signs so I don't put myself in that situation.
Sure.
It's a lot of little things that go unnoticed to the average eye.
Understood. In your experience in the past, have you ever taken a dog into custody that has bit another dog?
I have not.
You have not. Did you ever learn in the course of your investigation or your care of these two dogs that Chesty bit Maverick in the face?
I did not see anything on Maverick.
A dog interacting with, in your training and experience as an expert, I think, does that kind of event, that trauma, being in a fight with another dog and getting bit, does that trauma persist? Or do you think that subsides over a brief period of time or any period of time?
I think it can persist.
Okay. Do you think, or do you know in your training experience that dogs have a sort of, a memory?
Yes.
Would they have the instance or the ability to remember a certain traumatic incident and equate it to a certain circumstance they're in?
Yes.
My question then would be, would it be possible for this dog to equate the dog park, the chain link fence, that environment with the kennel that he's being, or they're both being contained in?
Not necessarily. It's different environments, but it's still scary to them because, like I said, they haven't had much exposure at all to anything other than their apartment and the leash walks.
Sure.
So everything's scary to them.
Sure, I understand. At this time, Madam Chairperson, I have no further questions. However, I have just recently had the opportunity to acquire the report, the behavioral report and the supplemental report. So if this board is so inclined to continue this hearing, I would like the opportunity at least to have Ms. Carlos present so that I could ask her some questions on that report should they arise, and I think that you may have the same, but that's just my request.
Yes. Head nods in affirmative.
Thank you. At this time, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair, does the board have any additional questions based on Attorney Moriarty's questions?
I have none.
No.
Okay. In that case, hearing no further. Selectman Carrera?
Want a motion to continue the hearing, Deborah?
Yeah.
That's
So,
right.
if I may, Madam Chair, I think we potentially have two more witnesses, in fact. But I'll say that these are the two town witnesses. And so the next break would be, we have members of the public that may want to testify. The owner and respondent may want to testify. I don't know that, but perhaps. So we probably have at least two more witnesses. But we're moving on to kind of the second phase here. And I'm mindful of the time and the fact that you're on the fifth agenda item on your agenda. So if you are going to entertain a motion to continue, I would want to know what the current status of the dogs are and whether that's going to be maintained at the owner's expense during the continuance period. If that's going to be 1 week or 2 weeks, you'll have to decide that. And then second, if we're doing this a second night, that means everyone needs to be available for a second night. And so you may have witnesses that are going to testify this evening that can't make another evening. You might want to find out if they're available for a second night. If not, maybe we can take their testimony tonight.
So amongst us,
I won't make the motion.
okay,
Wait till see what you want to do.
okay. Let's see. When is, I'm just looking at the calendar.
Beat this thing a little bit further into the ground. I think we should assimilate what we got and then possibly pick up again.
So I could use the mic.
I was going to say I couldn't hear you.
We've had a lot of stuff to digest. There's stuff that's missing that kind of goes with before we move to the other witnesses, and we haven't seen, I don't have the reports from either there. I haven't seen the pictures, you know, so I appeal to you, Brian. Do you think it would be prudent to stop it now and pick it up later on? Or do you want to hear from who was ever here now, and then we can ask for the pictures and then go through it all over again, because it might have, somebody might be affected by the pictures and already spoke.
Yeah, so I'd like to pick that up, actually, Matt, if you will, Madam Chair. I personally think, I think you're on the right track. I think we need to take some time to digest it. Now is a good, clean time to sort of shift into the next phase. The two issues that we have to resolve for the short term is, as Mr. Winter mentioned, is we'll start with let's get a list of all the people who would like to speak, confirm their availability at the next meeting. We'll start with that. And then the second is to figure out what the status is with the dogs during the time being. The order in which I would like to take that is to deal with the witnesses first, and then what the status of the dog second. Is there anybody who's currently present who intends to testify? So I see no hands.
Online.
I was just asking if there's anybody present in this room.
I believe Ms. Geller would like to testify, and I would defer to town council on this. If we have the opportunity to have the public here present and they're willing to testify, I would just from being on a couple of town boards myself, I preferred maybe to have the public comment heard first, or the witnesses heard first, and then we can wrap with Ms. Geller any questions that we have for the other witnesses, and a closing, which I think we would assimilate well. We could end with Ms. Geller and wrap it up with that.
Okay.
Just by suggestion, it's completely up to you.
No, we'll work with you. Yeah, I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to ask. So the idea is that she would sort of be the last person we'd be hearing from. Is that
doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be the first person at our next hearing, and then obviously we could end with the town. Either way, that's fine.
Okay. Is there anybody nobody other than Ms. Geller, who of the people who are present in this room right now intends to testify? Is there anybody online? You can feel free to either leave a comment or just raise your hand, and we will be able to tell. Okay, so we have Paula Cardulo. Anybody else other than Paula? Ms. Cardulo. Then I will ask, I don't see anybody else's hand raised. Our next meeting, is it next Tuesday?
We can have a meeting next Tuesday, and that would be Tuesday. I just had just a minute, the calendar. Today is the 5th, so that would be Tuesday the 11th.
So Tuesday, July 11th. So for the two people who, since Ms. Geller is here, are you available next Tuesday? It would be 7 o'clock as well. Ms. Cardulo, just 7 o'clock on Tuesday, July 11th. Would you be available for that time?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, excellent. So all of the witnesses are available. The next question is, what will be the status of the dogs during this time period? I'm going to leave that question because I'm not sure how to ask it necessarily to town council.
I'm sorry, Madam Chairperson.
Yes.
I am panel on a 4-day jury trial on the 11th, and I would imagine that the 11th is going to be quite chaotic for me. Could we do the following week?
Okay, we have a meeting scheduled on the 18th currently. So no date, no time, no date between the 10th to the 14th, which is next week, any day next week.
See, today is Wednesday, so we can adjust our schedule to accommodate yours, and either meet on next Wednesday or next Thursday.
Same time, 7:30?
Probably would start at 7.
7. How about the 20th? That's
20th would be
Thursday the 20th?
Thursday the 20th.
Are we available on the 20th?
I don't have.
I'm not. I can speak tonight or I can speak the 11th.
What did you say?
You can speak tonight or the 11th.
Or
Ms.
the 11th?
Cardullo, we were discussing potentially July 20th. You're not available on the 20th?
I'm sorry, I'm not after the 11th.
Okay, thank you.
Are you?
I'm available on the 20th, but I would kind of like to hear the answer to the second question before we continue it for so long.
What was that?
The care, custody, and
Oh, sure. That,
control of the dogs.
That the dogs would remain kennelled at your client's expense throughout the continuation.
yeah, do we know the expense by any chance?
Officer Carlos, do you know the answer to that?
Yes, it's $10 per day per dog, so $20 a day.
Let me just confer, I'm sorry.
Of course.
That's fine, that's acceptable.
Okay. So the 11th is, half of us are not available, or some of the people are not available, some are. 20th, we have the same problem. So where do we go from here? Not that I want to necessarily pile on meetings, but want to make sure that we can accommodate everybody. Alternatively, we have Wednesday the 12th. That'd be 1 week from today.
I'm available on the 12th.
I'm the vice chair of the zoning board in Weymouth. We meet at 7 p.m. on Wednesdays, but I could do the following Thursday. That would be the 13th.
Thursday, the 13th?
Yes.
It doesn't work for our attorney.
Tuesday, the 11th.
Madam Chair, Paula did state that she would offer her testimony this evening if that helps with the scheduling.
Thank you. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think that probably might be our best path forward is to offer Ms. Cardullo an opportunity to provide testimony today, and then we can meet again on the 11th. I think you mentioned, no, you're not available on the 11th, but you're available on the 13th.
Okay.
13th.
We
Well, the
have-
10th, on Monday. I don't know if this board meets on Monday.
I'm not sure if we even have time enough to schedule a meeting for that. Yeah. So I think probably Thursday the 13th, and then we will hear from Ms. Cardullo tonight.
So our attorney is not available.
Oh, you're not available. Oh, jeez. That doesn't go. But then we can go back to Tuesday, July 18th. Tuesday, July 18th worked for everybody except for
No, we
Ms.
have a
Cardullo.
meeting scheduled on the 18th.
If I may, Madam Chair, Gilder, is
Did say the
the 18th when the solid
18th.
waste hearing is supposed to be voted on? What date was that? Was not decided. I thought it was the 18th.
The 18th and August 1st are the two dates that we held for our strategic plan meeting.
Okay.
I'm available any day of the week, the 17th to the 21st. I'll even do a Friday.
Friday, the 14th?
Sure. Isn't that?
Oh, our attorney cannot meet on Friday, the 14th?
Okay, so rather than pull out a calendar and start trying to cross-check this, I think that if we take Ms. Cardullo's testimony, then we can work out the rest of the scheduling offline, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound realistic?
That's fair.
Wait just a minute.
I'm sorry, we still have to, it's a public hearing. So
Oh,
we
yeah,
still
we've got to
continue it
continue
to a
to
date
time certain.
certain.
Jeez, man.
But the 18th looks great.
I know. And honestly, I mean, we can keep on pushing it out, but we do have two beings that are waiting for us to make a decision here. Okay. Monday, the 10th was that date that was suggested. I think if we post tomorrow, would we be okay? You would have to post tomorrow by.
Yes.
Gilda, if we post by noontime tomorrow, would be okay for what date, Steve? What date, Steve?
The idea here would be Monday, the 10th, and we would have time. We'd have the 48 hours required by open meeting law, but it would be the only item that we would discuss. So I think that putting together an agenda should be quick. But now we have to ask who's available on July 10th. Okay, so
Our
not enough
attorney
people.
and a select board member.
Sorry?
I'm not available on a Monday. Mr. Carrera is not available, and our attorney is not available on a Monday.
Christie will be away next Monday.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Talk about this coming Monday? Yes. Mr. Christie will be away.
As well, yeah. So the 11th was out, the 12th was out, the 13th. The 14th is a Friday, and I think that you weren't available for that, pushes us into the next week. The 17th, I think that was out. 18th is out, so we're talking about the 19th.
Well, if we find some availability to hear the lady online, I can't remember her name. Hear her tonight, so extend our meeting tonight to hear her testimony. So maybe suspend it. So there are other agenda items, we resolve that tonight, then reconvene to hear the person online, and then offline, we can schedule the other meeting.
We're not able to do that because it's a public hearing, and we need to continue it in an open meeting. We have to say during the meeting that we're continuing until a certain time and date. So we're not able to.
Madam Chairperson, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll make things easy. Let's do the 11th.
11th?
Courts are closed at 7 p.m., and I'm an overachiever.
We could always pick this up at 8 o'clock.
I was thinking
That would be
too.
wonderful.
Okay.
8 o'clock on the 11th.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is that going to be the only item?
Yes.
Good.
Okay. Okay. So we can continue it now, or we can, because Ms. Cardullo mentioned that she's available on the 11th. We can either continue it right now, or we can hear her speak. We're getting pretty close to 10 o'clock.
So everyone's available.
Okay. So then apologies, Ms. Cardullo. We do want to hear what you have to say, but we're going to continue the public meeting until July 11th at 8 p.m. So my motion is to continue until July 11th at 8 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thank
your
you.
patience and cooperation.
Moving right along to item number 6, order of taking Tosca Drive, Central Street, Canton Street intersection project. Mr. Coulter, are you planning to take the lead?
No, ma'am. The assistant town engineer is supposed to.
He is online.
He is online.
Yeah, we've got him online.
Oh, there you are, sir. Thank you.
Would have been better if he was here.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you and good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here tonight to present the order of taking for the Tosca Drive intersection project. As you know, we've been working on this project since around 2018. This is a Mass DOT TIP project that we've been bringing through their system as a part of this, the TIP program. As you know, the town pays for design and right-of-way acquisition, and then the state picks up the tab for all the construction, which is around $5.2 million. So this is this order of taking is sort of the final piece of the legal puzzle for this portion, in which we've done easement plans and layout alteration plans. As a part of those easement plans, the affected properties had gone through the appraisal process, which we've had 2 appraisals done for each property, and an amount for damages has been awarded to each of the affected properties, and that was included in your packet. So now with the board voting, hopefully tonight, to issue this order of taking and award damages to the affected properties, that will finish up the legal end of things. Town meeting has approved about $300,000 to award damages to the affected properties. And if you tally up everything in the appraisals, it comes to around $221,000 there. So we built in a little bit of buffer, and hope, not unknowing what the total would be. So we fell shy of that, and we're happy that we had enough money to cover all the damages. In the packet that you received tonight, there is a motion for the board, a suggested motion. I can read that for you, or one of the members of the board could read that if you are willing to entertain approving this tonight.
I was looking for that in the package and I couldn't spot it. Could you just tell me what page it's on the PDF version? So it's not in there, it looks like. Hold on a second.
I have it.
Yeah, actually, I think the backup material came a little later than when the initial agenda was posted.
Not to worry, I have a copy of it in front of me.
I can read it if that's okay.
No, one of us has to make the motion, so I'll just go ahead and make that motion, and then we'll see where it goes from here. I move to adopt the order of taking for the Tosca Drive project in the form presented, and to award damages for the taking to the affected owners in the amount indicated on a schedule provided for that purpose. Upon consultation with council, the town engineer is authorized to make non-substantive revisions to the order and associated plan as may be needed to provide for their recording.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you. Moving right along to
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Moving right along to the next agenda item, which is item number 7. Acceptance of portion of the Park Street Sewer Project. Craig, please proceed.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be presenting this one as well. So, as a part of the Park Street Sewer Project, I think we've laid a little over a mile of sewer line down Park Street, 10th Street, and then into the Campanelli Industrial Park, all of which will flow to a pump station, which is yet to be constructed due to some supply chain issues. So we expect that will be completed by the end of the year. When that pump station is completed, it's going to pump back up through the system to Park Street to about Ash Street, flow by gravity up to Fano Drive. So in short, there's a section in Park Street that doesn't rely on the pump station. It can flow by gravity from Ash Street over to Fano Drive without relying on the pump station. And we've been approached by some property owners in the area who have built septic systems and due to property transfers would like to tie in now. So we're requesting the board to allow people within that certain framework for property transfers of failing systems to connect at this point before the total project has been completed, and at which point in time betterments will be assessed. So it's a little before the betterment process, and sort of in the interim, and we're requesting the board to consider allowing tie-ins to this particular section of sewer. The length of sewer that would be accepted is about 2,100 linear feet, and there's potentially 33 properties that could tie in to this section. The entire project had about 73 properties, so somewhere around, a little better than a third of the properties could connect here. In the packet, we had an inspection done of the sewer that was performed by environmental partners, and we video inspected this section of sewer, and it's passed inspection, so we feel it's acceptable for use at this point in time.
Please, we're open and available for a motion. I didn't have one written. Oh, yes, Mr. Carrera.
Through you, Madam Chairman, to the Assistant Town Engineer. Craig, you and Mark discussed that even though this would be opened up for them to lay their connections, the contract is still responsible for some of the paving imperfections in that stretch, right?
Yeah, this is unrelated to the paving.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Coulter.
I think if a member wishes to make a motion, it can repeat the language, acceptance of portion of the Park Street sewer project as presented.
Gravity section only.
Gravity section only.
Okay, motion so made.
Second? A motion made and it was second. All in favor?
Oh, that's
Aye.
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 And I vote aye as well.
It's my copy paste, just what he said.
Thank you very much. That was approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sticking with us.
It's been an interesting evening.
Yes, it is. Moving right along to agenda item number 8. We have, I wanted you to pay specific attention to the second board commission, which is Brockton Area Transit. It says 1 vacancy and no applicants. After the deadline, we did receive 1 applicant, and that was Mr. Zoll expressed an interest. So I asked if you're okay with re-noticing or opening up this availability again in 2 weeks, and then we could vote on it at that time.
Stanley's the only applicant, right?
He's the only one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel comfortable accepting the application. I mean, he's somebody who we all know, and though he did not meet the deadline is a set of criteria that we have some flexibility over. If the rest of the board is interested in allowing exception, that'd be great. If you want to re-advertise this and just go by the book, I'm fine with that too.
Well, there's a in-between that we could do. We don't have to post an advertisement. We could just give it 2 weeks, and then.
Okay, sounds perfect. Then we'll give it 2 weeks, and
then we'll vote on it and accept Mr. Zoll. Okay.
I'm comfortable with that.
The other boards commission appointments, as you can see, there's one, a community preservation committee. There was 1 vacancy. Okay, I'm gonna butcher this name, I know. Alumbunai Olutu. She is an incumbent, and she wants to get reappointed. And we did receive her application in a timely manner.
Okay, well, I will nominate Ms.
Sure.
Go for it. Motion to appoint, I mean, there's only one person, but yeah, motion to appoint Ms. Olotu to the Citizen at-Large position for the Community Preservation Committee.
You don't need a second on the nomination, so just call the vote and we'll throw it.
On the vote, Mr. Gito?
Yes.
Yes.
And I vote yes, too. So she's reappointed, and the Planning Board is the only other board and commission that had an applicant apply, and that was the Planning Board. There's one vacancy, 2 applicants. I did receive an email from Mrs. Morris, Miss Morris. She said she had another obligation. She had a conflict. She was out of town, actually. She was out of town. I'm sorry, what was that, Miss? Out of the country. She was out of the country.
Mr. Murphy is online.
And Mr. Murphy is online. Thank you very much.
I'm here.
Hello there, Mr. Murphy.
Hello.
So any questions?
Maybe Mr. Murphy would like to present his credentials to us, as we would ordinarily do for other applicants.
That would be a great. Thank you so much. We see your resume and your letter of interest. So yeah, please.
So, as you can see from my interest and also from my resume, I have a vast experience as far as I have a background in construction. I have a contractor's license for years. Once I got into the pharmaceutical industry, I let the contractor's license lapse, seeing that I didn't need it anymore. But I worked on large-scale projects when I worked for Sanofi, and of those projects, it was over $500,000 of changing out some steam lines. Also, it would be also purified water systems, rebuilding those. And then at the tail end of it, I also got working on waste systems and disposal of waste through the MWRA. So as far as handling different projects, I feel that I do have experience. But more important is being project manager, I had to look at details. And I always believed as, you know, the devil's in the details. You have to pay attention to that because, again, working with contractors coming in, if you don't specify what the details are, it can be overlooked, and that's very important with any project. So I would love to share that experience. I'm now retired, so I have more time to get involved in some of these town projects and oversee.
Any questions from the board?
I nominate Mr. Murphy.
Do I get a second?
You don't need a second.
Okay. On the vote.
I would actually like to ask
Okay.
Mr. Murphy a couple of questions, if the board will allow it.
Yes, Vice Chair Cavey.
Mr. Murphy, thank you for your application. I do have I see you have experience as a contractor. It seems like the majority of your education experience falls within mechanical engineering and project management. Stop me and tell me if I'm wrong about any of this, but I'm just reading the resume as I understand it. And you've been volunteer for the town for many, many years. The question I have is related to the role of the planning board and specifically within its role in influencing zoning within the town. What could you help me understand some of your philosophies about what you think the zoning of the town should incorporate going forward in the future? Some of our strengths and weaknesses currently. I'd love to be able to hear your take on some of that.
Well, I've been to several over the years. I've been in several meetings as far as zoning board meetings, planning board meetings. I'm sure if somebody can say that I'm not shy as far as not speaking up and asking questions of the different developments coming into town. And I think that as on the planning board, I did read what their mission statement is, and staying within the guidelines, that's one of the things that, I would have to do by all means, but by the same token, bring up different questions that may have been overlooked over the years. So that's why I felt the need to get involved with the planning board.
Well, that's very helpful, but I just want to ask the question again because everything you've just said was very helpful, but wasn't the question, which was with regard to the zoning that the influence that the planning board has on zoning specifically. What are some of your thoughts on our zoning, things that ought to change, things that work, things that don't work, and the kinds of things that you would like to see happen in the future?
Well, I think that my first step would be, first of all, getting on the planning board. The other thing is, like I said, I read the mission statement. Also get into, it would be, I take it like the first year as a learning experience with any new position, any new job. Take from the people that are there to see what they have to say, that are on the board. And then, as you know, over the past several years, town meeting, there's been a lot of zoning changes, like with downtown. They've changed several things. So, for example, one of the things that I was very concerned about at town meeting was when they changed the height of the buildings. They wanted to go to, I believe it was was it 60 feet high building, 5 stories high, and whether or not the fire department, I remember the fire department had some issues with that, whether or not they could reach that. One of the things that came up with working in facilities, for example, they put up a 5-story building, but then they also put air conditioning and other equipment on top. They put, solar panels. Maybe that's something that should be looked at that was really never addressed in the zoning. So that's the things that I take an interest in.
I very sincerely appreciate you taking the time to help me understand that. Thank you.
I have no questions. I saw his background, his resume, his letter of interest. Have no questions. On the vote.
I guess one of the things that I would ask is there are a lot of things that the planning board is going to be involved in over this next year. Some of them are the zoning issues that Mr. Cavey mentioned. There is a review of the redevelopment plan and its relation to the master plan that need to be dealt with. And I guess I think that there will be a lot of time that will have to be spent by the planning board over the next year dealing with those particular issues, as well as the ordinary work that is required, and a lot of review of other documents and sort of balancing all of that. I think probably this next year may be one of the most significant years that the planning board is going to have to deal with with issues that are going to affect the town for the next 20 or 30 years. I'm not suggesting that that you wouldn't be capable of doing that, but I am just warning you that that the work is probably going to be very intense. And I have heard you speak over several years at town meeting, and I know that you are very, very interested in the town. I believe that you would be able to do that work, but I don't think that it's going to be a piece of cake. So I just mentioned that. And if you would like to respond to me on that, that would be fine.
And I appreciate that, and that is why, again, now that I'm retired, I do have some more free time on my hands, so to speak. Don't tell my wife that, but it's a case of where I could. I honestly believe that every time there's a town meeting, different things come up. I would drive to the different warrants that were put in the book, the different articles that were put in the book, to see exactly what they're talking about. I remember years ago when we were talking about Glen Echo. I took a ride down there. I spent, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes walking around when they were just talking about buying the land. I was amazed at the place. And I think that's part of the responsibility of, again, reading what's being proposed and understanding it. Like I said earlier, the devil's in the details and knowing what you're coming up against. So
you do get into details. There's no question about that, and I think that that's very important. That's why I put your name in nomination.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just a comment.
Mr. Carrara.
It's great to ask people what they want to change and all this, but we got to realize when we put people on boards, they got to read the manual that's handed to them, the bylaw book for the planning board. You use that tool to apply it to what's coming before you. Then you can broker after that. But we have a set booklet that hasn't changed, that some of it has, but that's what you go by. When you're on conservation, it's this thick. When you're on zoning, it's this thick, because it's case by case. Just because Lou got something doesn't mean Steve's gonna get it. But I think everybody that gets on these boards is not gonna change the world. They have to maintain what we've set down, the new zoning in town, in what the current stuff is. And planning board is very explicit in their manual. Tells you how to do a road, tells you how long it can be. But we choose to let them go 100 feet more because it's allowed. We choose to narrow streets and make it harder for the police and the fire. Just as Mr. Murphy said, Chief Carroll said, I don't know at the time if the fire goes down, if I can set up a tower truck in there. And I know what he's talking about. So that's all I got to say, and we can move on Lou's motion now.
Thank you, Mr. Carrara. Mr. Calder.
Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. In my previous position in Kingston, we were engaged in a half a dozen lawsuits, and all of them had to do with overreach by certain committees, conservation, zoning, and planning. So I'd like to just echo Scott's comments. It is of critical importance, and I'm certain this candidate's very much aware of it, critical importance that we comply with the law. Every time a board or committee steps outside of regulations, they put the town in harm's way with respect to litigation. And when I took that position over and had to assume several lawsuits, this is several years ago, it was because of board or committee overreach with regard to implementing and interpreting regulations. So I know The applicant understands that completely. It's just very, very important that we really understand Scott's comments, because I've seen it go the other way many, many times. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
I would like to say one more thing.
Yes, Mr. Gito.
Obviously, I was not heard, so let me be clear. This next year, the planning board is going to be looking at a number of plans and looking at zoning to create the laws that we are going to be dealing with, the results of which will affect the town for the next 20 years. It's not just to look at the current laws that are in place. That was the point that I was raising to Mr. Murphy. It's not just looking at what we have at the present time. It's looking at what we will have when we finish this next year. And I'm not concerned with his being able to do that. I'm just saying that that is going to be what the job is. It's not last year's job or the year before's job. It's this year's job.
Thank you, Mr. Gito. I got your point early on. I didn't have any questions for Mr. Murphy, and that's because I knew this would be, first of all, I was happy that he applied, but next, this is his first year being on, if he's appointed, to be on the planning board. But his background in project management, mechanical design, and operations and safety would give him a good solid foundation to look at where we are today and moving forward, what's potentially in our future. And I think he would do a good job. So, on the vote.
Yes.
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 And I vote yes as well. Congratulations, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. Moving right along to...
Thank you very much, Peter, for applying for this job.
Well, thank you.
Have a nice
Seeing
evening.
as long, I'm going to be shutting off. You have other business to take care of.
So we have, moving right along to our next agenda item, which is interdepartmental transfers, one from police salaries to town council expenses, the next from civilian dispatch salaries to town manager salaries, and the third from civilian dispatch salaries to facilities expenses. Mr. Coulter, or are you planning to take the lead on this?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. If you look at the third page of section, what is this, 8? Yes, third page of section 8. It describes in detail, section page 3 and 4, in detail what we're transferring for legal fees. It's a fairly substantial overrun from what was budgeted. Primarily, well, you can see what many of the issues were. At least 20,000 of it was for KP Law, which we just didn't get that spigot shut off fast enough to transition to our current Labor Council. We've gone through all these invoices. They're 100% correct. I'd like to point out that the second to last and the third to last from the bottom, miscellaneous was for testimony offered by the former town manager in litigation that has since been resolved. And the William Solomon attorney is special counsel hired for the sole purpose of reviewing and negotiating the Verizon contract. The numbers all add up, and so we're looking for that transfer request. Any questions on that one?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Crab?
No.
The next.
I vote yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Next one? The next one is for the purchase of the town hall bulletin board, electronic bulletin board. It's, we're asking for that transfer from civilian dispatch to facilities. The facility dispatch surplus is because it has been understaffed all year. Instead of 8 dispatchers, there's been 4. That's where that money comes from. I would suggest that the board vote it, but I do have information, the reason they called me in. The Finance Committee, and I pose no opposition to it, asked if this expenditure can wait until the fall town meeting. They support it. They think it's a great idea in terms of transparency and communication. They just think for that amount of money, they'd feel better if it went before the fall town meeting. So if it was the board's wish to hold off on that one and defer it until the fall town meeting, I think you'd be in agreement with the Finance Committee's recommendation.
Motion?
I would prefer that second route, the fall town meeting, rather than doing that now.
I think that's wise.
That's the motion, and that has been seconded. On the vote, Mr. Gito?
Yes.
Yes.
Square? Vice Chair
Yes.
Cavey? And I vote yes as well.
Madam Chair, the second part of that transfer is for the holiday decorative lights, to purchase them. They've been leased for many years. That lease has run out. This would be to purchase them and avoid that expense in the future. So I'd ask that you consider approving the second portion of that, which is for the holiday lights. And there is a quote in your package for that.
Is that the 13,693?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion to approve it.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And I vote aye as well. Unanimous.
Thank you, members. The third request is for transfer from the town manager's office. I'm looking for it. It's at the very end. It's for an increase in labor due to just it simply being unbudgeted for the additional expense associated with increasing the assistant's position. We don't use names, but when we
Right. I was looking for that number.
yes. Jill, can you show us exactly where that is? I see the town manager's budget. The actual transfer of the numbers. I believe it's about $10,000.
And that's going way.
Did you find it? It's coming from civilian dispatch to the town manager's office to cover an overrun deficit in the salary line item.
Yeah, it's about $9,400, $500.
Yes, thank you for that, Steve.
So I'll make a motion to approve that.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that does it for this agenda item. Moving right along to item 9, consent agenda. 9A, approval of open meeting session minutes of April 18th, 2023, May 16th, 2023, and May 30th, 2023. And 9B is acceptance of donation from Abington Bank in the amount of $500. Does anyone want to pull any of those items for discussion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to pull item B.
Item B, all right. Want to pull anything else? Okay. Yes, Vice Chair Cavey.
Yeah, so I think fortune wasn't in their favor, but we have members of the Energy and Sustainability Committee who I think have been waiting here all night very patiently to speak on this. So if you would like to come up and speak on it, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we can just move along. So this is the deposit of debate donation to Stoughton Energy and Sustainability Committee. I'm sorry to have you guys sit around for so long, but I appreciate your patience.
Not at all. All right, well, I'm Dave Billow. I'm the Vice Chair of the Stoughton Energy and Sustainability Committee, and I'll be brief, and thank you, Madam Chairman. I have Nathan Cleveland here with me, the Chair of the committee. And we had an event, April 15th, Learn How You Can Fight Climate Change. And as part of the preparation for that, we solicited donations from a few local banks, and Abington Bank was generous enough to give us a check for $500. The check didn't come in until after the event, and we have since found out that in order to utilize the check, it has to be accepted by the town, and have had a chance to talk to Bill Rowe, and he directed us to the select board to take care of that and accept the check on behalf of the town and on behalf of the committee. And our intention is to use that money to reimburse our costs that we had for the event, which I think was quite a success. We had 3 excellent speakers. We provided honorariums to the speakers, which were the main part of the expenses, provided refreshments, coffee, and a banner for the event. So the money will be well spent, and we hope that the town will be happy to accept that, again, on the town's behalf and on behalf of the committee. And then I think we are also interested, if it's possible, as part of this, to allow the committee to accept other donations in the future, not that we have any planned just as yet. So I don't know if that is part of what is happening tonight, or if it can be, but we certainly hope to have the finances of the committee.
The donations have to be accepted on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll start with this one if we can. Thank you.
From reading the email that notice here, there's a mention of setting up an account. I don't know if that account has been set up. Does anybody actually know if an account's been set up? I mean, I think we might have to be the ones creating that account.
I think that's what we're doing, yeah,
Okay.
creating the account.
So it's to create the account, and then the second thing is to accept the donation into that
The
account.
$500.
Right? Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you guys very much once again for your patience and all for the work you guys have been doing with the Energy and Sustainability Committee. I'll make a motion to create, I guess we'll take it piece by piece, to create an account for the Energy and Sustainability Committee donations.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 And I vote aye as well.
Okay, and then the second is to accept a donation from Abington Bank of $500 to be recorded to that account.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I vote
Aye.
aye as well. Unanimous. Thank you.
And the other, a friendly amendment or just an afterthought on that is that we send the bank a thank you.
Yes.
Second.
Absolutely.
I think maybe the committee is certainly happy to do that, and we were waiting for this to get resolved. But a good reminder, and
I think maybe we both should do that.
a polite thing to do. So yes,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all of the work that you've done to have this check come in.
Well, appreciate the vote and in support. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you all very
much.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.
Okay. And then moving, this would be 9A, April 18th. Did you want your comment to be included in the minutes, or is this just an FYI, Mr. Carrera?
I would have typed it, but my shoulder doesn't allow me to.
It's quite all right.
No,
You have such perfect handwriting.
where there was the one line that was put in there that it said that
If it's not too much trouble, can you show us exactly where you want this information to be
on
inserted?
page 2,
Page 2.
it says, the only word I spoke says, Mr. Carrara added that he was always taught the best way to avoid impropriety is to avoid the issue. That's not what I said. I spoke quite a bit before that, and I said that just what I have on this sheet, that certain people are 24/7 by appointment, and we are the same way. That legislators don't have the luxury to step to the side and say they're not legislators at the State House or whatever, that they are that all the time. So you have to watch what you do. That's part of being a selectman, and that's what I said, that we're selectmen 24/7. We can get called at 2 in the morning if something's bad. We can get called at 6 at night. We're always reachable. We're the highest elected group in town, so we have to stand by what we do. I don't buy the letter that was written, that's when I found out the details of what happened, that 3 people should have not have been there on what went down. I'm just telling you that we don't have the luxury of being a resident. We are selectmen, sworn. You held your hand up. I did. 24/7. You got to watch what you do. That's why I didn't show up here when things weren't put out properly as a selectmen's meeting, in fear that other people might show on the board. I didn't want to give the impropriety that, because that's how people are going to look at it. So that's why you have to abide by it.
Mr. Carrera, I don't mean to cut you off, but the statement itself is in the first person. Would you feel comfortable if I made the motion?
Whatever you want to do to make it, I just wrote it quick.
Yeah, I think what if this is if you want this included, it should be included. But we can't just like copy and paste it right in. So
No, I understand.
So I would say my motion is to accept the minutes with the adjustment that the sentence you're referencing, which is near the bottom of page 2, where it reads, Mr. Carrera added that he was always taught the best way to avoid impropriety is to avoid the issue, should be amended to incorporate the statement, the words in the statement that he's provided. Now there's going to have to be some wordsmithing in there to kind of get it in there, but that's my motion.
Because the word issue predicts, like, if we were talking about something, that I'm talking about also being in another area together type of thing. That's why I brought up the 24/7 to protect yourself.
Yeah, all these things should be in there, and I'm comfortable with that. I think you just have to, it says like I said, and like you can't put that into the minutes. But so long as they just rework it so that it's clear that you said these things, that's really what I want to make sure it gets in there.
Because I know I said more than one line.
Put it in the second person. All right.
Okay, and did we get a second?
Was there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. One abstention?
Okay.
Oh, so,
And yourself? Did you vote?
yes, I voted to approve the April 18th minutes with the amended language as indicated by Mr. Carrera.
Perfect.
Using the correct tense and pronouns in the second person, yeah.
So motion to adjourn.
Oh, wait just a minute. Did we approve the other meeting minutes, which was May 16th and May 30th?
Oh, my motion was to approve all of them.
Oh, was it? I didn't hear that.
But we can go one at a time.
As amended, to include May 16th and May 30th.
Yeah, motion to approve those.
Yeah, and Mr. Gito seconded, and all in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Good night. Bye.